Hi guys and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we step aboard a snowbound train during the Great Blizzard of 1888, when steam, iron, wool and human patience are all tested beneath a sky that seems to have forgotten mercy. You stand on a platform where lanterns glow like tired amber eyes, and the air tastes of coal smoke, wet leather and coming snow. Somewhere a whistle sighs into the dark, and it sounds almost human. What happens when an ordinary journey becomes a little floating island of warmth, trapped inside a white and merciless world? What do people say when the timetable stops mattering? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And while you are still awake enough to type gently, tell us your location and your local time. It is always comforting to imagine all those quiet rooms, glowing softly across the world. Now, dim the lights. You step closer to the waiting train, feeling the boards of the platform tremble beneath your boots. The evening is cold, but not yet terrifying. It has the kind of cold that makes people complain with confidence, as though weather were simply another rude passenger. You pull your collar higher and watch white flakes drift through the station lamps. They fall lazily at first, delicate and harmless, touching sleeves, hats, trunks, and the polished brass railings. A porter passes with a stack of luggage, his breath fogging in front of him. The smell of damp wool follows him, mingling with coal soot and the sharp scent of iron wheels. Somewhere behind you, a woman scolds a child for stepping into a slushy puddle. The child looks deeply wronged. Naturally, you are travelling in March of 1888, when railroads feel modern, powerful, and almost magical. Trains connect cities, carry news, move food, and make distance seem less stubborn than it used to be. A person can leave one town in the afternoon and arrive somewhere entirely different by morning. That is the promise. Anyway, the car ahead of you glows with yellow light through frosted glass. Its windows are already blurred by steam from within, as though the train is breathing in its sleep. You hear the soft clank of couplings, the hiss of valves, and the muttered rhythm of men who know their work. Their voices have that practical tone people use when conditions are poor but still manageable. The Great Blizzard has not yet become a legend in your mind. It is still only weather. Annoying weather, yes, and dramatic enough for conversation, but not yet the kind that earns capital letters in history books. You climb the steps into the carriage, one gloved hand gripping the cold railing. The metal bites through the fabric, a little warning from the night. Inside, the air changes at once. It is warmer, heavier, and full of smells that belong to travel. Cigar smoke lingering from earlier passengers, polished wood, leather straps, lamp oil, damp coats, and the faint sweetness of someone's wrapped pastry. You move down the narrow aisle, sleeves brush sleeves. A man lifts his newspaper just enough to let you pass, as though this tiny courtesy costs him dearly. A young mother adjusts a blanket around a sleeping child, whose mouth hangs open in perfect trust. Across from her, an elderly gentleman guards a carpet bag with both hands, as if it contains the family fortune, or possibly sandwiches. The seats are upholstered, softened by use, and not quite as comfortable as railway advertisements suggest. You sit by the window and feel the cushion give beneath you. Beneath that softness, the wooden frame is firm and slightly unforgiving. Travel in the 19th century likes to remind the body that progress has springs, bolts, and hard corners. Outside, the platform is busy with movement. Porters hurry. Conductors check watches. Passengers exchange farewells that are half shouted through scarves. The snow thickens by small degrees, not dramatically enough to stop anyone yet, but steadily enough to make the lamps glow wider and fuzzier. A conductor steps inside, stamping snow from his boots. He carries authority in his posture and cold air in the folds of his coat. Tickets appear from pockets and purses. He punches each one with brisk little snaps, the sound clean and sharp in the warm carriage. When he reaches you, you offer your ticket. His fingers are red from the cold. He glances at the paper, clips it, and nods. His face says nothing unusual is happening. This is both comforting and misleading, which history enjoys very much. You settle back as the train gives a deep metallic sigh, The engine ahead exhales, and the carriage jolts slightly. Chains tighten. Wheels answer with a groan. Then the platform begins to slide backward. Slow at first, then with growing confidence, you are moving. For a while, the sensation is pleasant. The train rocks beneath you with a steady rhythm, iron wheels clicking over rail joints. The sound repeats and repeats, firm enough to measure time by, soft enough to invite drowsiness. Lamps sway overhead. Shadows move across faces, coats, baskets, and polished wood panels. Outside, the city thins into yards, warehouses, fences, and stretches of pale ground. Snow sweeps across everything, hiding ugliness with suspicious kindness. Telegraph poles pass like black strokes drawn against a whitening world. Their wires hum faintly in the wind, a thin, high sound that seems too fragile for the growing storm. In 1888, the northeastern United States depends deeply on those wires and rails. New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and countless towns rely on trains for mail, milk, coal, commuters, and business. The blizzard that begins now will paralyze cities, trap trains, bury streets, and expose how vulnerable modern systems can be. But inside the carriage, modern life still feels sturdy. Someone laughs softly over a private joke. A businessman folds his newspaper and announces that delays are inevitable in March. He says this with great confidence, because men with newspapers often feel licensed to explain the atmosphere. A woman near the aisle replies that March has been behaving badly for centuries. That earns a few smiles. Even the conductor, passing through again, lets the corner of his mouth lift. The snow taps the window in quick, dry flecks. It does not sound like rain. It sounds more like fingernails brushing paper. You lean close and see your reflection floating over the darkened glass. Beyond it, the landscape flickers in and out, swallowed by white gusts. The carriage grows quieter as miles pass. People arrange themselves for travel. A man removes his boots with a seriousness that suggests this is not his first overnight journey. Someone unwraps an orange, and its bright scent briefly cuts through the coal and wool. The sleeping child turns with a soft sigh, cheek pressed against the mother's sleeve. You feel the train's warmth along one side of your body. The window side remains colder. A thread of chill slides around the frame and touches your wrist. You tuck your hand beneath your coat and listen to the wheels. It would be easy to sleep, yet the weather keeps asking for attention. Gusts strike the carriage with sudden force, making the lamps tremble. Snow no longer falls straight down. It rushes sideways, almost horizontal, driven hard against the windows. The glass pales, clears, then pales again. Each clearing shows less of the world than before. The conductor speaks with another railway man near the door. Their voices are low, but you catch fragments, drifts, wind rising. Reports from the line. One mentions that snow is piling strangely in the cuts, those lowered stretches where the railway runs between banks of earth. Such places can trap snow like bowls catching flour. A scholarly uncertainty clings to storms like this one. Historians still argue whether the blizzard's deepest lesson was about transportation, communication, city planning, or simple human overconfidence. The answer may depend on whether you were a commuter, a telegraph operator, a milkman, or a passenger beginning to feel the window grow colder. The train presses onward. The engine's whistle cries into the night. Longer now, less cheerful than before. You imagine the driver leaning forward in the cab, face stung by blown snow, one hand near the controls, eyes searching for signals. Ahead of him, rails vanish beneath whiteness almost as soon as the wheels uncover them. A man across from you begins telling a story about a winter when the Hudson froze so hard people crossed it on foot. He says it happened when he was young, and perhaps it did. He says the ice groaned like an organ in church, which sounds beautifully unlikely. Nobody challenges him. On trains, old weather stories are public property. There is a quirky tale already moving through the carriage, carried by passengers who heard it from cousins, clerks, or men at station counters. Some claim that in terrible New York storms, shopkeepers tie ropes from doorway to doorway so pedestrians can pull themselves along without vanishing into white confusion. Whether every detail is true hardly matters tonight. The image feels believable enough. The snow wants to erase edges. You notice that conversation shifts when people sense uncertainty. Voices become polite, then overly cheerful, then quieter. The businessman checks his watch again. The mother asks whether the train is expected to arrive on time. The conductor gives the answer conductors have given across the ages. He says they are doing their best. It is not an answer. It is a blanket. The carriage rocks through a curve, and for a moment the wind hits broadside. Snow hammers the windows with a dry hiss. The lamps flutter. Someone grips the seat in front of him, then pretends he did not. Very dignified. Very human. You breathe in slowly. Coal smoke rests at the back of your throat. The warmth of the carriage seems more precious now, gathered from iron, fire, and effort. Beneath your boots, the floor vibrates with the engine's labour. That steady trembling travels upward through your legs, spine, and shoulders. A railway car is never truly still. Even when it seems calm, it murmurs, creaks, clicks, and sighs. Wood shifts in its joints, metal complains softly, luggage straps knock against hooks, passengers sniff, whisper, unwrap food, and turn pages. The whole carriage becomes a small society of noises. Outside, there is only wind. The city lights are gone now. Farmhouses appear rarely, blurred and distant, their windows glowing for 1 second before the snow folds them away. Fences run beside the track, then vanish into drifts. The telegraph wires sag between poles, gathering white along their lines until they look like threads of frost stretched across nothing. You press your gloved fingers to the glass. It is bitterly cold. The frost makes fern shapes around the edges, delicate and intricate, as if winter has decided to practice handwriting. The patterns grow while you watch. The train slows slightly. Nobody speaks for several breaths. The rhythm of the wheels changes, becoming heavier, more deliberate. You feel the difference before you understand it. The confident clicking is gone. Now there is a dragging effort beneath the carriage, as if the train is pushing through something dense and stubborn. The conductor moves toward the front. His boots strike the aisle in a measured pace. The elderly gentleman with the carpet bag watches him go. The businessman folds his paper again, though there is surely nothing new inside it. The young mother kisses the child's forehead and looks toward the window. You remain seated, listening. Steam blows outside with a loud rushing breath. The engine works harder. The wheels grind, catch, slip, then grip again. A faint shudder passes through the cars behind you. It is not panic, not yet. It is only the body of the train meeting resistance. The snow is deeper now. You imagine it gathering ahead, filling cuts, smoothing rails, covering switches, settling on signal lamps until their colours blur. Each flake is weightless alone, almost laughably small. Together, they become walls. Together, they stop cities. This is one of the quiet tricks of history. Great events often arrive as tiny things repeated beyond counting. A snowflake on a sleeve, another on a rail, another in a switch, another against a telegraph wire, then a million more, all obedient to wind. The carriage lights glow softly over tired faces. The earlier humour thins but does not vanish. Someone offers peppermint drops along the aisle, and several passengers accept. The candy smells sharp and clean, strangely festive against the stale warmth. You take one and let it rest on your tongue. It cools your mouth. A porter moves through, adjusting a latch near the end door. Snow dust blows in around the frame when he opens it briefly, and the carriage inhales winter. You feel the sudden sting on your cheeks. Then the door shuts, and warmth slowly returns, though not completely. The train slows again. This time, the silence lasts longer. You hear the engine breathing in the distance, a strained and rhythmic pant. The carriage gives one long creak, as if settling its bones. Beyond the window, the world is no longer landscape. It is motionless white, streaked by black gusts and occasional shadows that might be trees. You're still moving, but barely. Around you, people begin making small preparations without admitting they are preparations. Scarves are loosened, then tightened again. Bags are shifted closer. Food parcels are checked. Watches are consulted with increasing resentment. A woman removes gloves, rubs her fingers, and puts them back on. The elderly gentleman opens his carpet bag at last. Inside, you glimpse a folded shirt, a book, and a carefully wrapped parcel. Not treasure. Then, perhaps sandwiches. In a storm, sandwiches may outrank treasure. He catches your glance and gives a small nod. You return it. No words are needed. The carriage has entered that delicate stage where strangers become aware that they may need each other. The wheels turn slowly beneath you. Snow grinds against the lower panels with a faint rasp. The train pushes forward a little more, brave or stubborn, depending on your mood. A lamp flame bends inside its glass chimney, then steadies. You lean your head back against the seat. The fabric smells faintly of dust, smoke, and many previous journeys. You feel the vibration of the train soften beneath you. Your eyelids grow heavy, though the storm keeps tugging at your attention. Sleep comes near, then pauses, like a shy visitor at the door. Outside, the blizzard gathers its strength. Inside, you sit among wool coats, quiet breaths, dim lamps, and the slow realization that an ordinary journey has changed shape. You have boarded a train, yes, but you have also entered a small wooden world carried by steam into a night of white uncertainty. For now, there is warmth. For now, there is light. For now, the wheels still turn, and beneath all of it, under the soothing rhythm and the muffled voices, you begin to hear something larger than weather. You hear the first soft closing of the snow around the train. The window has become a pale wall, and you sit beside it as if beside a closed curtain. At first, the glass only blurs at the edges. Frost gathers in thin feathers, each one branching with delicate confidence. Then the snow presses harder, flinging itself against the pane until the outside world breaks into bright scraps and shadows. You search for a tree, a fence, a farmhouse lamp, anything with shape. The storm gives you only whiteness. The train continues forward, but its movement feels less certain now. It no longer slices through the country with a proud iron rhythm. It shoulders its way along, pushing into the thickening drifts with a tired determination. Beneath your feet, the carriage floor trembles in uneven pulses. The wheels strike hidden ridges of snow and ice, then settle back onto the rails with a dull, heavy clatter. A gentleman near the aisle clears his throat and pretends to read. His newspaper trembles slightly, although the carriage is warm enough for dignity. Across from him, a young woman lowers her knitting and looks at the window. The wool in her lap is dark blue, almost black in the lamplight. Her fingers pause around the needles, listening to the storm as though it is speaking through the glass. The lamps overhead burn with yellow patience. Their light turns the varnished wood panels honey-coloured and kind. Shadows rock slowly from side to side as the car sways. Every face looks softer in that dim glow, less certain of itself, more human. Outside, the blizzard takes away distance. That is one of its strangest powers. A clear day lets the mind travel ahead. You can imagine the next station, the next town, the slope of fields, the line of road beyond the crossing. But this snow removes everything beyond a few inches of glass. The world has shrunk to the carriage, the aisle, the seats, and the breathing strangers beside you. You hear the storm more clearly than you see it. Wind slides along the side of the train with a long, scraping moan. Snow rattles against the roof in dry bursts. Somewhere near the front, steam escapes with a fierce hiss, and the sound moves backward through the cars like a warning passed hand to hand. The smell inside deepens. Coal smoke seeps faintly through cracks and seams, mixing with lamp oil, damp wool, leather luggage, and the sour-sweet scent of tired bodies. Someone has opened a parcel of bread and cheese. The bread smells yeasty and plain, the cheese sharp enough to be noticed by everyone within 6 seats. Nobody complains. Hunger is an excellent diplomat. You rub your gloved hands together. The air close to the aisle remains warm, but the window breathes cold onto your shoulder. It creeps through fabric and settles there, a quiet reminder that comfort depends on thin materials and burning coal. You draw your coat closer, feeling the wool scratch lightly against your neck. The conductor enters again, and this time his expression has changed. It is not fear. Railwaymen dislike showing fear, especially in front of passengers who have already paid for confidence. Yet his face is more focused, his mouth firmer, his eyes quicker. He walks the aisle, glancing at the windows, the lamps, the luggage racks, the people pretending not to watch him. A passenger asks whether the tracks ahead are clear. The conductor pauses, one hand resting on the back of a seat. He says the line is difficult, but the engine is strong. It is the kind of answer that chooses comfort over detail. People accept it because the alternative is asking again. The engine whistle sounds, muffled by snow. It should carry far across fields, sharp and commanding. Tonight it comes back, flattened, as though the storm has wrapped it in blankets. The note fades quickly, swallowed by the wind. You imagine the locomotive at the head of the train, its iron face crusted white, its headlamp glowing into a rushing tunnel of flakes. The fireman shovels coal into the firebox, opening the door to a blaze bright enough to paint his arms orange. Heat strikes his face while winter claws at his back. The engineer watches the track vanish and reappear beneath the lamp. Mainstream history remembers the Great Blizzard of 1888 as one of the most disruptive storms in American urban life. It struck the Atlantic coast with fierce winds, heavy snow, and bitter cold, crippling rail travel and isolating major cities. The event helped convince some planners that wires and transport systems needed protection from weather. Modern convenience, it turned out, had been wearing a rather thin coat. Inside the carriage, modern convenience looks like a swinging lamp and a brass handle, polished by many hands. It looks like a ticket in your pocket, a timetable folded in someone's bag, and faith in rails laid across the land. That faith is not gone, but it is beginning to shiver. The train lurches. A few passengers gasp. The movement is not violent, but it is sudden enough to stir everyone from private thoughts. The wheels grind over something concealed beneath the snow. A child wakes and whimpers. His mother murmurs into his hair, rocking him gently as the carriage steadies. For a minute, conversation returns too brightly. People talk about ordinary things with great energy. One man discusses a hotel breakfast he expects to enjoy. Another claims that railroads always exaggerate delays to appear heroic later. A woman says she has seen worse weather in Vermont, though she does not specify when. Weather comparisons, like fishing stories, improve in the telling. You smile faintly and say nothing. The glass beside you is almost fully covered now. Frost thickens into cloudy lace. Snow sticks beyond it in clumps, then tears away, then returns. When you wipe a small circle with your glove, the cold bites through instantly. Through that little opening, you glimpse a signal post sliding past, its lamp blurred red in the white air. Then it is gone. That glimpse unsettles you more than total blindness. A vanished world can feel dreamlike, but a single half-seen object reminds you that real things are still out there. Poles, bridges, cattle sheds, frozen ponds, lonely houses. All of them stand inside the storm, unseen and patient. The wheels slow again. This time the rhythm breaks into strained intervals. Click, drag. Click, drag. The train seems to breathe between each effort. You lean slightly forward with the motion, as if your small body weight might help the engine. It is absurd, of course. But people do absurd things when machines struggle. A railway employee passes through carrying a lantern. Its glow moves across the ceiling in a warm oval. He smells of snow, smoke, and cold metal. His moustache is rind with frost, giving him the look of a man recently argued with by nature. He nods to the conductor, and they speak near the door in low voices. You catch only a few words. Cut. Drift. Switch. Telegraph. The last word stirs the carriage. Telegraph means connection. Telegraph means someone beyond the snow knows where you are. Telegraph means decisions can travel faster than wheels. Yet the wires outside have been catching ice and wind all evening. Those delicate black lines stretched across a sky with poor manners. A quirky little fact moves through your thoughts. In the age of the telegraph, people sometimes treated the clicking instrument almost like a living messenger, as if the wire itself had nerves. Operators could recognize one another by rhythm and touch, not only by name. In a storm like this, silence on the wire could feel eerily personal, as though a familiar voice had stopped answering in the dark. The conductor turns and speaks more loudly now. He tells the car that snow is heavy ahead and that the train may proceed carefully. He asks passengers to remain seated where possible. His tone is calm, but his request lands firmly. Remain seated. Those two words change the atmosphere. People obey, and obedience makes the danger feel more official. The businessman folds his newspaper and places it on his lap. The young woman resumes knitting, though her needles move without much purpose. The elderly gentleman draws his carpet bag closer with one foot. You feel the carriage tilt slightly as the train enters a curve. The motion is slow and guarded. Snow scrapes along the steps outside. Wind strikes the roof, sending a hollow thump through the car. The lamps tremble again, and one chimney gives a tiny clink. Your body begins to notice details your mind would rather ignore. The seat seam pressing into your thigh. The damp hem of your coat cooling against your ankle. The stale warmth under your collar. The peppermint fading from your tongue. The dry tickle of coal smoke in your throat. Small things become large indoors. The train pushes forward another few hundred yards. Perhaps more. Perhaps less. Distance becomes difficult to measure without a view. The wheels no longer sing along open track. They mutter. They complain. Sometimes they slip, spinning briefly with a strange, helpless sound, then catch again with a jolt. Outside, the headlamp must be carving a tunnel through snow. Yet inside your carriage, the whiteness presses against every window until travel feels less like movement across land and more like passage through a cloud. You are not sure whether the train is crossing fields or passing close to houses. You are not sure whether the next station is minutes away or unreachable. Historians have disagreed over how much warning railway companies truly had as the storm worsened. Some records suggest forecasts existed, but lacked the force and precision modern travellers expect. Other accounts show that local decisions depended on experience, optimism, and pressure to keep trains moving. Weather science was improving, but the sky still held most of the authority. A man near the front begins humming under his breath. The tune is low and unsteady. It might be a hymn, or it might simply be something his nerves have chosen. After a while, the child hears it and grows quiet. The mother continues stroking his hair in slow passes, each movement small and practiced. There is tenderness here. Tucked among the fear, you notice it in the way a stranger lifts a fallen glove and returns it without comment. In the way passengers shift their knees to make room for a porter. In the way nobody mocks the elderly gentleman when he asks whether snow can cover an entire train. The answer is yes. But nobody says it too quickly. The train gives another lurch, stronger this time. Luggage bumps in the rack. A basket slides a few inches and stops against a boot. The lamps sway wide, then settle. A silence follows. It is not empty. It is filled with wind, steam, metal, breath, and thought. You feel everyone listening at once. Even the child seems to hold still. The carriage becomes a listening instrument, tuned to the pressure of snow outside and the labouring engine ahead. Then the wheels resume. Slower still, a few passengers exhale. Someone laughs once, softly, at nothing. It is not amusement exactly. It is relief escaping in the wrong costume. The sound helps. The carriage loosens by the smallest degree. You turn again toward the window. The little circle you wiped has vanished beneath fresh frost. You do not clear it this time. There is no need. The world beyond the glass has withdrawn, and you are beginning to accept the terms of this strange night. The train is no longer a route. It is a room. Its walls are wood, glass, and weather. Its ceiling holds lamps that rock like sleepy stars. Its floor carries the tremor of effort. Inside it, strangers sit together with private worries, shared warmth, and the ancient knowledge that storms do not consult timetables. Your eyelids grow heavier, but sleep does not fully take you. Each change in speed pulls you back. Each gust writes itself along the carriage side. Each hiss of steam feels like the train answering the night in a language of pressure and heat. The white world tightens around you. There is something almost peaceful in its force, if you do not think too far ahead. Snow removes clutter. It softens ugliness. It hushes roads, roofs, fields, and towns. But beneath that softness, it is building weight. Beneath that hush, it is making decisions. The engine strains onward, brave in the blind dark. You sit with your coat pulled close and your shoulder chilled by the glass. Around you, lamps glow, wool rustles, and people breathe in uneven calm. The storm has hidden every landmark, every promise of arrival, every easy measure of time. And still, for a little longer, the train moves. The train stops so gently at first that you almost miss the moment. There is no dramatic crash, no terrible cry of iron, no grand announcement from the storm. Instead, the wheels turn more slowly, then slower still, until the familiar rhythm loosens beneath your feet. A final shudder passes through the carriage. The lamps sway once, as if surprised, and the long body of the train settles into silence. For several breaths, nobody moves. The stillness feels unnatural. A train is meant to tremble, click, sigh, and argue with the rails. Now it rests in the snow like a living creature that has chosen to crouch down. You feel the absence of motion in your stomach, that odd little emptiness that comes when travel stops without a rival. A man near the front lifts his head. "Station?" he asks, though his voice already doubts it. No one answers. You lean toward the window, but there is almost nothing to see. The glass is patched with frost and pressed by snow. You make a small circle with your sleeve, slower this time, careful not to chill your wrist. Beyond it, whiteness stands close, thick and unmoving. There is no platform, no lamp, no waiting roofline. Only snow. The carriage listens to itself. Someone swallows. A basket creaks. The young mother shifts her child higher against her shoulder. Far ahead, the engine exhales steam in heavy bursts. Each release comes with a muffled roar, softened by the storm until it sounds distant and buried. The conductor does not appear immediately. That delay says more than any speech might. Passengers look toward the doors, toward one another, toward their own hands. A businessman checks his watch, shakes it once, then holds it to his ear. Apparently, even time itself must now be inspected. You feel the cold more sharply, because nothing moves. When the train was pushing forward, warmth seemed to gather from effort. Now the chill around the window spreads along the seat and touches your hip. The floor beneath your boots vibrates faintly from the engine, but the rest of the carriage feels suspended. A porter enters from the next car, bringing with him a gust of air so cold it seems to have edges. Snow clings to his shoulders and cap. His face is darkened by coal smoke, but the frost on his eyebrows makes him look strangely festive. Nobody smiles. Festivity has left the carriage with excellent timing. He speaks to the conductor at the far end. Their words are too low to hear, but the shape of the conversation is plain. One man reports, the other considers. Both glance toward the windows. Then the conductor turns to the passengers. He says the train has met a drift ahead and must wait while the crew clears the way. His voice is steady, practiced, and almost soothing. He adds that the engine remains fired, the cars are safe, and everyone should keep calm. People do keep calm, mostly because they have no better occupation. Adrift. The word moves through the car like a small animal. It sounds soft. It sounds harmless. Adrift is something pretty along a fence, something children kick through on the way home. Yet everyone aboard knows snow can rise higher than a man in open country, especially where wind pours into cuttings and hollows. The train has not merely paused, it has been held. Outside, men climb down into the storm. You cannot see them clearly, but you hear the doors open and close along the line of cars. Each opening lets in a slap of wind and a smell of raw snow, coal smoke, and frozen iron. Boots strike steps. Voices vanish quickly. The storm eats words almost as soon as they are spoken. You imagine the crew moving forward with lanterns held low, shoulders bent, caps pulled tight. Their lamps must glow as dim yellow beads in the white air. Somewhere ahead, shovels bite into packed snow. Metal scrapes ice. A brakeman curses quietly, perhaps not quietly enough for his mother, but the wind is kind enough to edit him. Inside, passengers begin rearranging themselves for waiting. Waiting has its own posture. People sit back at first, pretending it will be brief. Then they loosen collars, shift bags, rub knees, and bargain silently with discomfort. The elderly gentleman opens his carpet bag and takes out the wrapped parcel. It is indeed food, which makes him look wiser than any statesman. He unwraps bread, cold meat, and a small apple. The apple shines dark red in the lamplight. He cuts it with a pocket knife, offering a slice to the mother nearby. She hesitates, then accepts for the child. That small exchange changes the air. Hunger, worry, and manners take their places together. You smell the apple when he cuts it. Clean, sweet, faintly sharp. The scent feels almost like sunlight, which is frankly rude of it under the circumstances. Still, it helps. Several people begin exploring their own bags with new interest. A woman produces ginger biscuits. A travelling salesman reveals peanuts in a paper cone. Someone near the rear has boiled eggs wrapped in cloth, creating a smell that inspires both gratitude and moral testing. Nobody speaks of the aroma. Civilization holds. Mainstream accounts of the Great Blizzard describe hundreds of trains stalled across the affected region. Railroads were lifelines, but their cuts, embankments, switches, and open tracks became traps when wind shaped snow into deep barriers. Steam engines were powerful, yet they depended on clear rails, visible signals, and crews able to work outside. Tonight, you understand that fact not as history, but as temperature. Your boots rest on a floor growing colder by degrees. Your breath is not visible, not inside, but the warmth has thinned. The lamps still burn, the seats still hold bodies. Yet the window beside you radiates winter with quiet discipline. The businessman asks how long clearing a drift usually takes. Nobody knows. Naturally, several people answer anyway. One says half an hour, another says 2. The woman from Vermont says it depends whether the drift has a crust. She says this so calmly that everyone briefly believes Vermont has appointed her ambassador of snow. You listen to the wind strike the carriage. It no longer feels like weather passing by. It feels like weather staying. Snow rasps along the lower panels, and now and then something hits the side with a dull thud. Perhaps packed snow thrown from above. Perhaps a broken branch. Perhaps the storm tossing furniture around its invisible parlour. The conductor moves through again, checking lamps and latches. He reminds passengers not to open the outer doors unless necessary. His manner is polite, but the instruction carries weight. Heat must be guarded. Light must be guarded. Small comforts have become supplies. You notice how quickly ordinary objects gain importance. A dry match. A wool scarf. A crust of bread. A seat away from the window. Even the dusty curtain strap beside you seems useful, if only because it exists and can be touched. You press your palm against the seat cushion. The fabric is rough and faintly warm from your own body. That warmth feels personal, almost private. You keep your hand there and listen as the crew works somewhere beyond sight. A shovel scrapes, then another. The sounds come faintly through the storm, irregular but determined. Scrape, lift, throw, scrape, throw. There is comfort in labour you cannot see. It tells you that the world has not abandoned structure entirely. Men still have tools. Tools still meet snow. Snow still resists, because snow is apparently ambitious. A scholarly uncertainty surrounds many passenger memories from this disaster. Some later stories surely grew in the retelling, polished by family dinners and newspaper columns. Historians still debate which details came from immediate experience and which were shaped by the legend that followed. Yet the emotional truth of being stranded is difficult to exaggerate. The train sits between places. That is the problem. Stations have names, clocks, benches, and people who expect arrivals. Open country has none of these courtesies. Here, the train occupies a nameless stretch of track, buried in a storm that erases distance. You do not know whether help is close enough to walk toward or too far even to imagine. A man suggests someone should go back along the line to warn other trains. The conductor says this has been considered. His careful tone reveals that consideration is not the same as possibility. In such wind, a person walking beside the tracks could lose direction within yards. One wrong step might find a ditch, a bank, or nothing friendly at all. The mother asks whether there is danger of another train striking from behind. The question travels through the carriage and sits down heavily. The conductor explains that signals have been set, and railway procedures exist for such delays. His answer is probably true. It is also a thin comfort when the windows show nothing. You think of the red lamps and flags railway crews use to protect stopped trains. You imagine a brakeman fighting backward through snow to place warnings along the track. His lantern swings near his knees. Wind stings his eyes. Each step sinks deep. The rails that guide the train are partly hidden from the man trying to guard it. There is a strange intimacy in imagining someone unseen working for your safety. The carriage grows quieter again. Not silent, exactly. Quiet in layers. The child chews apple with solemn concentration. The elderly gentleman folds his paper wrapping carefully, saving every crumb. A woman whispers a prayer without moving her lips much. The salesman cracks peanut shells one by one, trying to make them sound casual. You feel drowsiness approach, then retreat. It is difficult to sleep when the train is stopped. Motion would have rocked you gently, but stillness leaves room for thoughts. You wonder about the station where someone may be expecting you. You imagine a clock there, hands moving without sympathy. You imagine a clerk looking down the track, seeing only snow. Outside, another door opens. Wind charges into a nearby vestibule and makes the carriage lamps flicker. Men's voices rise briefly, then vanish. One voice laughs, surprisingly. It is a harsh little laugh, but not despairing. Perhaps someone slipped. Perhaps someone made a joke about digging all the way to spring. A quirky rumour circulates through the car. A passenger claims that during old railway blockages, crews sometimes tried ramming drifts at speed, backing the engine and charging like an iron bull. This method, he adds, worked beautifully unless it did not. The conductor, overhearing, says nothing. His silence is a complete review. You picture it anyway. The locomotive retreating into darkness, then rushing forward beneath its lamp, snow exploding from its pilot. Glorious. Foolish. Very 19th century. Human beings do love turning machinery into bravery, but this train is not charging now. It waits. The waiting stretches. Watches come out again, then disappear. People stop asking how long. The question has worn itself thin. The carriage air grows sleepy and sour with breath, food, lamp heat, and damp clothing. Your shoulders loosen despite yourself. You hear the engine breathing. You hear snow moving against wood. You hear shovels. Then only wind. Then shovels again. The rhythm becomes part of the room. It is not music, but it has pattern enough for tired minds. A railway man steps inside, stamping snow from his boots. His coat is crusted white from shoulder to hem. The smell of the storm comes with him, cold and mineral, like stone, smoke, and clean linen left outdoors. He rubs his hands and speaks to the conductor. The drift ahead is deeper than expected. There it is. Not disaster, not rescue, just deeper than expected, which may be the most human phrase ever spoken. Plans often meet the world and discover the world has added several feet of snow. Passengers absorb the news differently. One woman closes her eyes. The businessman mutters about missed appointments, because commerce must be mourned even in captivity. The elderly gentleman offers the railway man a piece of bread. The man accepts after one polite refusal, then eats with quick, grateful bites. You watch his hands. They are reddened and cracked, the nails rimmed with grime and ice. He does not look heroic. He looks cold, tired, and practical. That makes him more reassuring somehow. Heroism is theatrical. Competence has chapped knuckles. The conductor announces that clearing will continue, but passengers may need to remain aboard for some time. He asks everyone to conserve warmth and keep belongings close. The words fall softly, yet they settle firmly across the carriage. Some time, no one asks him to define it. The train is now a shelter, not a vehicle. Its purpose has shifted without ceremony. The seats become beds in imagination. The aisle becomes a street. The lamps become small suns that must not fail. The passengers become a temporary village, gathered by accident between snowbanks. You adjust your scarf and lean away from the window. The cold there is too steady. Across the aisle, the young woman with the knitting notices and shifts her bag, making room near her side. She does not say anything. You move slightly closer to the aisle, grateful for the quiet generosity. The storm continues to cover the world. Out there, rails vanish under white weight. Telegraph wires strain. Roads lose their edges. Barn doors rattle in the wind. City streets fill with drifts that will swallow carts, stairways, and shop fronts. Yet your world has narrowed to lamplight, breath, and the soft exchange of food among strangers. You let your eyes close for a moment. The carriage rocks slightly, though the train is still. It is only wind pressing against the cars, making them sway in place. That tiny motion feels like a memory of travel. Your body accepts it gratefully, almost sleepily. There will be no arrival yet, no platform, no porter calling a station name, no easy stepping down into a familiar town. The train rests in the snowbound dark, held between intention and outcome. Around you, people settle into the knowledge slowly, like lowering themselves into cold water. You breathe in wool, smoke, apple, lamp oil, and winter. The engine exhales ahead. The shovels begin again, and you sit in the amber half-light, learning how large a pause can become when snow fills every direction. Night settles inside the sleeping car as if it has purchased a ticket of its own. The lamps burn lower now, not because they are failing, but because the darkness around them has deepened. Their yellow light rests on the polished wood, the brass fittings, the luggage nets, and the tired faces turned away from the windows. Everything glows softly, yet the glow seems enclosed, carefully guarded against the enormous cold outside. You sit with your shoulders drawn in and your coat buttoned higher. The chill has found new paths through the car. It slides under door seams, curls around window frames, and gathers near the floor where boots and hems slowly lose their warmth. The heater still gives off comfort, but it no longer conquers the room. It merely negotiates. The cushions beneath you have become both bed and chair, which means they do neither job very well. You shift one way, then another, discovering fresh wooden edges hidden under fabric. The railway company has been generous with velvet appearance and cautious with actual softness. Very thoughtful of them. Around you, passengers prepare for sleep in quiet, awkward stages. Hats are tucked beneath arms. Collars are loosened with small sighs. Shawls become blankets. Carpet bags become pillows. The aisle is crossed by careful feet, each person moving as if the car is a sick room rather than a train. The young mother lays her child lengthwise across her lap. She folds her own coat over him, leaving one hand free to smooth his hair. The child sleeps in pieces, waking whenever the wind strikes harder, then sinking back into drowsiness when her voice returns. She hums so softly, the tune is almost only breath. Near the far end, a man removes his spectacles and rubs the bridge of his nose. He looks older without them. Most people do, somehow. He wraps a scarf around his neck twice, then places his hat over his face, as though blocking the world is now an acceptable sleep method. The air smells thick and lived in. Coal smoke hangs faintly near the ceiling. Damp wool steams from sleeves and trouser cuffs. Lamp oil adds a warm, greasy note, while leather trunks contribute their old, dry scent. Someone has spilled a little coffee from a tin flask, and its bitter aroma rises from the floorboards. You breathe slowly through it all. There is comfort in shared discomfort, though nobody would choose it on purpose. The carriage has grown less formal. People no longer guard their manners with the same polished effort. They yawn openly, adjust stockings, accept crumbs, and lean against strangers by accident. The blizzard has reduced everyone to bodies needing warmth. A railway man comes through carrying extra blankets. They are rough grey wool, thin in places, and smelling faintly of storage, dust, and sheep. No one complains. A blanket in a stranded train has the social value of a small inheritance. Hands reach out with gratitude, carefully dressed as politeness. One reaches you. You take it and spread it over your knees. The wool scratches your palms, but its weight feels blessedly real. You tuck the edges beneath your legs, trapping a pocket of warmth. The fabric is coarse enough to remind you that comfort was often practical first and pleasant second. The conductor explains that passengers in this car should remain together for warmth. Some compartments farther back are colder, he says, and certain doors will stay closed unless needed. His words are calm, but everyone understands the meaning. Heat is becoming something to manage, not assume. This is a simple fact of 19th century travel. Passenger cars could be heated by stoves, steam pipes, or other systems depending on the railway and car design. Such heat could be uneven, smoky, and sometimes dangerous. Comfort existed, certainly, but it often arrived with drafts, soot, and a strong sense of compromise. The storm presses its own opinion against the walls. Wind moves along the train in long waves. It begins with a low moan near the front, rises into a whistle at the window seams, then fades toward the rear. Snow hisses across the roof in restless sweeps. At times, the whole car gives a faint wooden pop, like an old house settling around a winter night. You close your eyes, listening. The sounds sort themselves into layers. Nearest are breaths, whispers, rustling fabric, and the tiny click of a watch chain. Beneath that lies the creak of leather, the knock of a loose latch, and the faint metallic ticking from the heater. Farther away, the engine breathes at intervals, a great iron sleeper refusing to rest fully. A woman across the aisle asks whether anyone knows a poem. Her voice is embarrassed by its own request. The question seems childish for 1 second, then perfect. A poem would be something orderly, something with lines that know where they are going. The elderly gentleman says he remembers only pieces. He begins anyway, offering a few remembered lines from a winter verse learned long ago. He loses the middle, apologizes, and invents what sounds suspiciously like an ending. Nobody corrects him. The storm has suspended literary standards. Soft laughter moves through the car. It is not loud enough to disturb the child. It only warms the air a little, like a match cupped between hands. The young woman with the dark knitting smiles without looking up. Her needles have stopped. The wool lies in her lap, unfinished and patient. A quirky tidbit drifts into conversation when the salesman mentions sleeping car etiquette. He says some travellers insist a proper night journey requires a special cap, slippers, ear coverings, and a private flask of something medicinal. He claims the richest passengers travel with so many accessories that sleep itself must feel overdressed. Someone replies that tonight, a potato sack would seem elegant if it were warm. You glance down the aisle and imagine fashionable railway sleepers in ordinary times. Curtains drawn, boots lined neatly, gentle snores from behind upholstered partitions, a porter moving like a shadow, perhaps a faint perfume, a folded newspaper, a watch placed within reach. Civilization loves its little rituals, especially when pretending travel is effortless. Tonight, rituals have loosened. The car is too cold at the edges and too crowded at the centre. People sleep sitting up, half-turned, bowed forward, or tucked sideways against luggage. One man has tied a scarf around his head and seat back to keep from nodding forward. It is ingenious. It is also deeply undignified. The two qualities often travel together. You pull the blanket higher. Its fibres rasp against your chin. Your hands warm slowly beneath it, first aching, then tingling. Outside, the wind slams a gust into the side of the car, and the lamps dip visibly. A few eyes open. Nobody speaks. The flame steadies. That small recovery matters more than it should. Everyone looks away from the lamp at once, pretending they were not watching. You nearly smile. Humans are proud little creatures, even when wrapped in borrowed wool and trapped by weather. The conductor checks each lamp with careful hands. He trims a wick, wipes a glass chimney, and shields the flame while adjusting it. His face is lined with fatigue, but his movements remain precise. In this dim room, lamp tending feels nearly sacred. Light must be coaxed, fed, and protected. A scholarly uncertainty appears in later discussions of this famous storm. Researchers still question how passengers experience the cold differently depending on car type, railway company, and exact location. Reports describe hardship in many forms, but not every stranded train suffered the same conditions. Memory, newspaper drama, and real danger all became woven together. You can understand why. A cold night lengthens inside the mind. 1 hour may feel like 3. A draft by the ankle becomes a character. A weak lamp becomes a crisis. Every sound from outside arrives carrying possibilities. The imagination works hard when the eyes have little to do. The window beside you has changed again. Frost no longer forms delicate feathers. It has thickened into rough, opaque patches, almost like ground glass. At the bottom, a ridge of snow has packed against the frame. You touch the inner sill and find it wet where frost has melted, then frozen again along the edge. The moisture chills your fingertip. You wipe it on the blanket and tuck your hand away. Sleep tugs at you, but the seat resists comfort with stubborn professionalism. Your neck finds no easy angle. Your knees complain. Your feet have cooled despite the blanket. Still, the room's murmurs pull you downward. A man near the rear snores once, loudly, then wakes himself and apologizes. Several people assure him it is nothing. It was absolutely something. But kindness has become one of the available fuels. He folds his arms and tries again, this time producing only a cautious whistle through his nose. The mother's humming fades. Her child's breathing deepens. The elderly gentleman sets his apple core into a scrap of paper and places it inside his bag, preserving order in the middle of inconvenience. There is mobility in that, or perhaps habit. Habit deserves more credit than it receives. The train gives a small jerk. Every sleeping posture breaks at once. Heads lift. Blankets shift. The child stirs. You grip the seat edge before realizing the car has moved only a few inches. Somewhere outside, men shout. Then the engine exhales fiercely. Wheels strain, slip, and settle again. Then, nothing. Disappointment has a texture. It feels like cold wool and a stiff seat. It smells like smoke and tired breath. It sounds like several people sighing or pretending not to. The carriage returns to its waiting, but the attempt has changed the mood. The train is not forgotten by its crew. It is still being urged, tested, considered. That helps. You imagine men outside with shovels, lanterns, frozen sleeves, and aching backs. Snow must be piling behind them as quickly as they clear it. The wind is no passive obstacle. It is an unpaid labourer for the storm, rebuilding every wall that men tear down. One almost admires the efficiency, though only from indoors. A porter brings a pail of coal through the connecting door. The smell sharpens, black and mineral. He moves carefully to feed the stove or heating system, depending on the car's arrangement. Passengers watch with the quiet attention normally given to public ceremonies. Every dark lump promises a little more warmth. The metal gives a soft clatter as coal is added. Soon, heat strengthens near the centre of the car. It does not reach everywhere, but it creates hope with practical edges. People shift closer without making it obvious. Social distance contracts in winter. You feel warmth return to your knees first, then to your hands, then faintly to your cheeks. The blanket traps it, and your body softens. Your thoughts slow to match the lamp glow. The storm keeps speaking, but its voice changes while you grow tired. It is less an enemy now than a vast presence outside the walls. It moves, presses, withdraws, and returns. It does not care about tickets, schedules, or the impatience of respectable passengers. Weather is rude that way. You lean your head against a folded coat. It smells of damp wool and faint tobacco. Not ideal, but acceptable. Your ear catches the muffled pulse of the car through the fabric. Tiny sounds move everywhere. A button clicking against wood, a shoe sole shifting, a sleeper murmuring, the small wet sniff of someone fighting a cold. The lamps soften. Your body begins to trust the room, because the room is full of other breathing bodies. There is safety in numbers, even uncomfortable numbers. The passengers are not friends exactly, but they are witnesses to one another. No one is alone in the white dark. A voice near the aisle whispers that dawn will make everything easier. Another voice answers that Dawn had better bring a shovel. The reply is dry and gentle, and a few tired smiles appear. Humour survives best when it travels light. You let your eyes close again. Behind your lids the lamp glow remains red and gold. The train sways slightly in the wind, just enough to imitate motion. The blanket warms the hollow between your knees. Your hands loosen. The noise outside blends with the breath inside until both seem part of one slow rhythm. You are not comfortable, not truly. Your neck aches. Your feet are cold. The air is stale. The seat is narrow. Yet sleep does not require perfection. Sleep often accepts the bargain available, especially when the night grows long and the body is tired of arguing. The carriage settles deeper into its stranded rest. Around you, the small village of passengers dims into silhouettes and softened breath. The lamps continue their patient watch. The snow piles against the hidden wheels, against the steps, against the doors that must remain closed. Outside, the blizzard writes over the land in white, covering every track, road, and intention. Inside, you drift at the edge of sleep, wrapped in scratchy wool and amber light. The train is cold, but not lost. The night is severe, but not empty. And beneath the wind, beneath the creaking wood, beneath the slow iron breathing of the engine, you hear the fragile comfort of people keeping warm together. By midnight, the carriage has learned everyone's smallest sounds. You know the businessman by the dry scrape of his match against the box. You know the child by the soft catch in his breathing whenever the wind rises. You know the elderly gentleman by the careful rustle of paper around his food, always folded neatly, even now. The storm has taken away scenery, distance, and schedule, but it has given you a strange map of strangers. The lamps glow lower. Yet the car feels less lonely. People have stopped pretending this is an ordinary inconvenience. That pretending was exhausting anyway. Now they settle into the truth of the night. Not happily, but with the modest relief that comes from admitting what everyone already knows. You are stranded together. The phrase sits quietly in the warmest part of the carriage. It does not need to be spoken. It shows itself in the way people angle their bodies toward the aisle, toward the heater, toward voices that feel steadier than silence. The train is no longer only transportation. It is a narrow village with brass handles, frozen windows, and shockingly poor sleeping arrangements. Someone asks whether anyone has more bread. The question is asked gently, without shame. That matters. Hunger has been circling the car, sniffing at bags and pockets. Not fierce hunger, not yet, but the kind that grows from waiting, cold, and the knowledge that breakfast may not arrive politely on a plate. The elderly gentleman opens his carpet bag again. The salesman offers peanuts. The woman with ginger biscuits breaks the last few into pieces. The mother shakes her head at first, but accepts half a biscuit for the child. The businessman produces a paper twist of sugared almonds and looks offended by his own generosity. You have a little food too, wrapped in cloth and pressed flat from travel. It is not much. A heel of bread, a small wedge of cheese, and 2 dried figs. You unfold it on your lap, feeling the cloth rough beneath your fingers. The figs are sticky with cold sugar, dense and wrinkled. They look like they have had a difficult century. Still, they are sweet. You pass one across the aisle to the young woman with the dark knitting. She smiles, surprised, then divides it with a small knife and gives half back to you. The gesture is absurdly formal and completely perfect. In a stranded railway car, manners have become a way of keeping civilization lit. The smell of shared food spreads through the carriage. Bread, apple, cheese, peanuts, ginger, coffee, and a faint trace of boiled egg linger together in the stale air. It is not elegant, but it is human. Your stomach accepts the arrangement with no complaints from the balcony. Outside, the wind shoves snow against the car in sudden gusts. Each gust makes the walls whisper and the doors tremble faintly in their frames. Yet inside, voices begin to rise in small islands of conversation. People speak softly, not because anyone ordered them to, but because the night itself seems to ask for quieter tones. A woman near the rear tells of a cousin who once slept in a station waiting room for 2 days during a winter delay. The cousin, apparently, became so comfortable that she complained when the train finally arrived. Someone laughs into a scarf. It is a tired laugh, but genuine. The salesman says that a delay is easier when one has samples to sell. He taps his case with one foot and announces, in mock seriousness, that he carries combs, collar studs, ribbon, needles, and certain household improvements of revolutionary importance. Nobody asks to buy anything. This does not discourage him at all. He opens the case. A ripple of interest moves through the car. Inside are small compartments filled with ordinary treasures. Bone combs, folded ribbon, buttons, pins, thread cards, shoelaces, and little packets of needles lie arranged with commercial dignity. In lamplight, they look almost theatrical. The salesman lifts one item after another, describing each with the solemnity of a museum curator. The child wakes enough to stare. The mother lets him hold a bright red ribbon for a moment. His fingers close around it, and his eyes grow wide. The ribbon is nothing, really. A strip of dyed fabric. Yet, against the colourless storm, it seems extravagantly alive. When he returns it, he does so with visible reluctance. A quirky tidbit surfaces when the salesman claims that some travellers keep lucky objects for train journeys. A certain banker, he says, never boards without a silver button in his vest pocket. A schoolteacher he once met carried a dried bean for safe arrivals. A sailor's widow insisted that placing a shoe sideways under the seat confused bad luck. The car considers this nonsense with unexpected seriousness. The woman from Vermont says bad luck is probably not that easily confused. Still, several passengers glance toward their shoes. People are very reasonable until midnight on a stranded train. Then a dried bean begins to sound like planning. You feel the mood shift from fear toward companionship. Not fully, not permanently, but enough. The storm remains outside, enormous and busy. The train remains trapped. The cold remains patient, but conversation has warmed spaces coal cannot reach. Mainstream history often remembers disasters through numbers, maps, and official reports. Those are important, of course, The great blizzard blocked rail lines, severed communication, and disrupted entire cities. Yet inside each stalled carriage, history also happened through crumbs passed hand to hand, children soothed, blankets shared, and strangers deciding not to be strangers for one night. That kind of history rarely fits neatly into ledgers. A clergyman, quiet until now, clears his throat and offers to lead a brief prayer. He does not insist, he simply offers. Some bow their heads, others sit respectfully, eyes open. His words are plain and brief, asking for safety, patience, and strength for those working outside. The prayer ends without flourish, and the silence that follows feels calm rather than empty. Then the businessman coughs and says he hopes patience comes before breakfast. A few people smile. The mother asks where everyone was headed. This begins a gentle unfolding of lives. One person travels to visit a sick sister. Another carries legal papers. The young woman with knitting is going to take a position as a companion in a household near Boston. The salesman has 3 towns on his route and a firm belief that every town needs better collar studs. The elderly gentleman is visiting his daughter. He says this with softness and then looks down. Using the excuse of wrapping his knife, his daughter has recently had a baby. He has not seen the child yet. He speaks of the baby as if it is a rumour he deeply wants confirmed. You tell only a little of yourself, enough to belong, not enough to become a subject of inquiry. The others nod, accepting the boundary. Shared hardship can make people intimate quickly, but it can also teach tact. Not every door must be opened just because snow has closed the larger ones. The train creaks beneath another blast of wind. A lamp flame trembles hard, then steadies. Someone murmurs thanks to nobody in particular. The conductor passes through, and this time passengers greet him as a familiar figure. He reports that the crew is still working, but the snow is filling the cut as fast as they can clear it. His face is lined with cold and lamplight. The clergyman asks whether the men outside need food. The conductor hesitates. That hesitation is answer enough. Within minutes, small offerings gather near the aisle. Bread, cheese, nuts, biscuits, coffee from flasks, and a precious orange. The orange is debated. Its owner insists. The peel alone, she says, will cheer a frozen man. This is possibly true. Citrus has a way of behaving like bottled sunshine. A porter collects the food in a cloth and carries it toward the front. When he opens the door, the storm bursts in. The cold cuts through the carriage, sharp enough to make several passengers flinch. Snow swirls across the floorboards, bright under lamplight, then melts into dark specks. The door shuts. The warmth rebuilds slowly, as if offended. That brief glimpse of the outside changes the room again. You saw almost nothing, yet the nothing had force. White air, a lantern swinging, a man bent forward, snow already piled high against the steps. The blizzard is no longer an idea beyond glass. It has entered the car for one breath and shown its teeth politely. Historians still argue whether the social response during the storm should be understood mostly as communal resilience or as the temporary discipline of people with no better option. Perhaps both views are fair. Compassion can be practical. Practicality can look very much like kindness when a carriage is cold and the world is closed. You watch the young woman resume her knitting. The red ribbon from the salesman's case lies across her lap for a moment. Then he lets her keep it for the child. He says it is damaged stock. It is not. Everyone knows it is not. The child holds it in sleep, one fist curled around colour. A railway employee returns with news from the front. The food has reached the men. The orange peel was received with applause, he says, though perhaps he is improving the story for indoor morale. Nobody objects. Some stories deserve small improvements. The salesman asks what the crew can see ahead. The employee shrugs. Snow, mostly. The rails disappear onto packed drifts. The cut through the landscape has filled deep on one side, and the wind keeps pouring more into it. The engine cannot safely push through unless the way opens. That is the plain account. Plain accounts are sometimes the hardest to hear, yet fear does not rise as sharply now. The passengers have food in their stomachs, names in their ears, and other people's reasons for reaching morning. The carriage has become less anonymous. Worry shared among known faces changes shape. It still weighs heavily, but it spreads. A card game begins near the centre of the car. No money is wagered. The stakes are peanuts, buttons, and pride, which may be the most dangerous of the three. The cards are worn soft at the corners. Players place them on a carpet bag balanced between knees. The businessman loses twice and blames the lighting. The woman from Vermont wins calmly. You listen to their soft laughter and the slap of cards on leather. The sounds mingle with wind, coal ticking, and the steady breathing of sleepers. The storm has forced time to widen. Since nobody can arrive, nobody can rush. This is not exactly peace, but it resembles a stern cousin of peace. Your hands are warmer now. The blanket over your knees holds heat from your body and from the crowded air. Your shoulder no longer aches from the window draft because you have shifted toward the aisle. The young woman's bag rests near your boot, and your own parcel lies near hers. Objects have crossed borders too. The mother whispers that her child usually fears storms. Tonight, she says, he seems comforted by all the voices. You look at him sleeping with the red ribbon in one hand and crumbs near his collar. His face is soft, round, and entirely uninterested in railway policy. Sensible child. A man near the door tells a tale from his grandfather about stagecoaches buried in snow before railways came. He describes horses steaming in the cold, wheels frozen into ruts, and passengers walking behind to lighten the load. The tale is likely stretched at the corners, but the carriage receives it gratefully. Older hardships make present ones feel less singular. You feel the great chain of winter travel behind you. Sledges, coaches, ferries halted by ice, roads lost under drifts, and now trains held in white silence. Human beings keep inventing ways to move, and winter keeps inspecting the work. The inspection is thorough. The conductor sits for the first time, only for a minute. Someone makes space. He lowers himself onto the edge of a seat and removes one glove. His fingers are swollen and red. He flexes them slowly. The passengers pretend not to watch, giving him the privacy of a man who has briefly become tired. He thanks everyone for the food sent forward. His voice is quieter now. He says the crew will rotate when they can. He does not promise movement. Nobody demands it. Promises have become too expensive. Instead, the elderly gentleman asks whether he has family. The conductor looks surprised, then says yes, a wife and 2 boys. The boys enjoy trains, he adds, especially when they are not trapped in one. This earns a low chuckle. He smiles properly then, for the first time in hours. A sense of fellowship settles. Imperfect but real. It does not remove discomfort. Your back still aches. The air is still close. The snow still works outside with blind persistence. But the carriage feels held together by more than bolts and couplings. It is held by stories, food, glances, jokes, and the small decision to make room. The card game ends when the peanuts are eaten by general consent. The salesman closes his case. The clergyman folds his hands. The woman from Vermont leans back with the expression of a victor too polite to boast. The mother dozes, one arm still curved around the child. You let your eyes move across the lamplit car. Every passenger carries an unseen life beyond this train. Homes, letters, debts, griefs, errands, hopes, appointments, and secrets. For a few snowbound hours, those lives rest side by side in a wooden car, warmed by coal and crowded breath. No one chose this company, which may be why it feels strangely honest. The storm continues beyond the walls, but its power has met something small and stubborn inside. Not machinery this time, not schedules, not the proud speed of modern railways, just people sharing what they have, and making a room where fear cannot sit alone. You pull the blanket closer. The lamps hum softly. The red ribbon glows in a sleeping child's hand like one warm thread stitched through the night. The crew's struggle reaches you first as sound, not sight. Beyond the sealed doors and frosted glass, Men are working in a world without edges. You hear their shovels striking packed snow in dull, stubborn beats. Sometimes the sound is crisp, metal against ice. Sometimes it is muffled, as though the snow has swallowed the blow before it can fully speak. You sit beneath the dim lamps, wrapped in borrowed wool, listening to labour in the dark. The carriage has quieted, but it is not asleep. Several passengers rest with closed eyes, yet their faces lift whenever a new noise comes from outside. A shout, a whistle, a scrape, a sudden burst of steam from the engine. Each sound becomes a message, though most are too brief to understand. The conductor moves through the car carrying a lantern. His boots leave wet marks along the aisle, dark ovals that slowly spread into the wooden floor. Snow clings to the hem of his coat, then melts and drips. He smells of smoke, cold air, and iron filings, as if the storm itself has roughened him. He pauses near the heater and warms his hands only for a moment. Then he turns back toward the front. Someone asks if more men are needed. The conductor looks at the passengers. His gaze moves over gloved hands, wrapped knees, tired faces, and city shoes not made for snowbanks. He says the crew has the tools and knows the line. It is a kind answer. It also means no. Outside, railway work is becoming a contest against a storm that keeps rebuilding itself. Snow has filled the cutting ahead, blown there by wind that treats the lowered track like a convenient storage bin. Men shovel a channel, then look back to see fresh snow sliding in behind them. Nature is not subtle tonight. It is efficient and rather smug. You picture the scene from the fragments you receive. A lantern swings low over a wall of white. The engineer stands near the locomotive, coat stiff with frost, face lit orange by the firebox whenever it opens. The fireman feeds coal into the hungry heat, his shoulders aching with each throw. Brakemen move along the train, checking couplings, brakes, lamps, and the snow piled near the wheels. The engine is alive with pressure. It hisses, pants, and occasionally lets out a hard metallic cough. Steam rises and instantly turns ghostly in the freezing air. The great wheels wait under a crust of snow, ready to move if the world will kindly stop being a wall. It will not. Mainstream railway operations in the 19th century depended heavily on human skill in bad weather. Switches had to be cleared by hand. Signals had to be seen, placed, and protected. Crews walked the line in conditions that modern travellers might describe with stronger language than a bedtime history prefers. A porter enters carrying a shovel with snow packed along its blade. He sets it near the door and flexes his fingers. They are red, wet, and shaking slightly. The businessman immediately offers his gloves, then seems surprised by himself. The porter refuses with a nod, but accepts a strip of cloth to wrap around one wrist. The cloth comes from the woman with the ginger biscuits. She tears it from an inner lining without ceremony. Her dress will suffer, but history has rarely been kind to hems. The porter wraps the cloth around his wrist and gives a tired smile. A little warmth moves through the car. You feel it in your chest more than your hands. The passengers are not able to move the train, but they can make the workers less alone. That knowledge softens the helplessness. It turns waiting from emptiness into attention. The conductor explains what is happening in careful pieces. A drift has formed ahead, higher than the pilot of the engine. The crew is trying to open a path and clear snow from around the switch nearby. The wind keeps shifting, and visibility changes every few minutes. The train cannot simply push ahead without risking damage or worse. The word switch travels through the carriage. It sounds small, almost domestic, like something on a wall. Yet on a railway, a frozen or buried switch can decide the fate of entire trains. Iron points must move cleanly to guide wheels from one track to another. If packed snow or ice prevents that motion, certainty becomes a dangerous illusion. You imagine gloved hands scraping packed snow from iron. A lantern set beside the track, its flame shaking in the gale. A man kneeling where no person wants to kneel, using a tool, a boot heel, perhaps even numb fingers to free metal from ice. Progress, it appears, has many moments of kneeling in bad weather. The young woman with the dark knitting asks whether they use ploughs. The conductor says there are snowplows on some lines, and efforts may be underway elsewhere. But a plough is only useful if it can reach you. This is a deeply railway kind of problem. The solution is also trapped by the problem. A quirky detail emerges from the clergyman, who once saw a railway snowplough shaped like a great wooden wedge. He says it looked less like a tool and more like a barn trying to become a weapon. Someone asks whether that is an official design description. He says probably not, which is a shame. You picture the wedge plough with sleepy fascination. A blunt, broad nose bolted before an engine. Snow flying up in white wings. Men cheering from platforms. Then you picture the same plough meeting drifts too deep and packed too hard. Even heroic shapes have limits. The storm presses harder against the car. Wind claws under the doorframe, carrying tiny grains of snow that glitter on the floor before vanishing into melt. The carriage smells colder now whenever the door opens. Not only cold, really. It smells of iron, wet wool, coal dust, and a faint mineral cleanness from snow cut open by shovels. A shout rises outside, nearer than before. Everyone stills. The engine breathes once, twice, then gives a powerful surge. The train jerks forward a few inches. Wheels grind beneath you. The carriage jolts, and luggage knocks against the racks. A hat falls from someone's lap. The child wakes, clutching the red ribbon. Then the wheels slip. You feel it as a shivering slide, a useless spinning under the floor. The engine roars with effort, but the train does not advance. Steam blasts into the night. The carriage trembles, then settles back. The silence afterward is thick. No one speaks harshly. There is no one indoors to blame, which is inconvenient for human nature. The businessman opens his mouth, reconsiders, and closes it. Very wise. Complaints are poor fuel. Outside, the crew resumes. You hear shovels again, more frantic for a minute, then steadier. Scrape, lift, throw. Scrape, lift, throw. Their rhythm enters your breathing. Your shoulders tense with each imagined lift. Snow is beautiful from a window. It is less charming when each pound must be moved by a freezing man with a wooden handle and sore lungs. You think of the fireman feeding coal. His work is the opposite of the shoveller's, yet just as necessary. They remove whiteness from the track. He feeds blackness to the flame. Each shovelful lands in the firebox, flashes, settles, and becomes heat. The engine needs pressure, and pressure needs fuel. Every system depends on someone sweating near danger or freezing near it, often both. A railway worker returns briefly to the car with frost on his eyelashes. The mother offers him coffee from a small flask. He accepts, holding the cup in both hands, inhaling before drinking. The steam rises against his face. For a moment, his eyes close. It is a tiny ceremony. He says the wind has shifted again. Snow is coming sideways into the cut, pouring over the banks like dry sand. They clear a space, and it fills almost immediately. He says this without drama, which makes it more convincing. Historians still argue whether the disaster's railway failures came mainly from the storm's extraordinary force or from systems already strained by growth, competition, and crowded schedules. The answer may be uncomfortable because it allows both. A blizzard can be overwhelming, and a society can still be more fragile than it admits. Inside the carriage, fragility looks like a lamp flame cupped by glass. It looks like damp socks. It looks like a child's ribbon, a shared cup, and the conductor trying to speak honestly without frightening anyone. It looks like strong iron rails hidden under snow so soft that children would normally laugh at it. The clergyman asks whether a hymn might encourage the men. When the door opens, the salesman says a hymn may encourage them or convince them the passengers have become desperate. The clergyman accepts this with good humour. They compromise on quiet singing inside, low enough not to disturb those resting. The tune begins softly. Not everyone knows the words. Some hum, some listen. The sound is gentle and uneven, but it fills the car's upper shadows. It is not performance. It is insulation of another sort. The walls remain cold. but the air between people warms with breath and shared rhythm. You do not sing loudly. You let the melody brush past you while your eyes rest on the windows. Frost has made the glass opaque, except where heat has opened small, cloudy patches. Beyond them, the occasional lantern passes like a wandering star, low and unsteady. One lantern stops outside your window. For a few seconds, you see a man's outline through frost and snow. Bent shoulders, cap pulled low, one arm raised to shield his face. He is close enough that you can almost feel the cold on his sleeves. Then he moves on, and the white closes behind him. The sight stays with you. The train's world is divided by inches. Inside, stale warmth and human voices. Outside, slicing wind and labour that numbs the hands. You sit in safety because others step repeatedly into discomfort. The thought is humbling in a quiet way. Not grand, not theatrical, just true. The conductor returns with a plan. The crew will dig around the engine wheels, clear the pilot, and try again in short movements. If that fails, they may need to wait for heavier assistance or daylight. He says daylight as though it is a tool, and perhaps it is. Seeing the shape of trouble can be half of solving it. The businessman asks whether walking to the nearest station is possible. The conductor answers firmly. No one should leave the train. The storm has buried landmarks, and the drifts are unstable. Even experienced men stay close to the line and lanterns. A passenger wandering off would become another problem for people already busy surviving. Nobody argues. The idea of walking had sounded brave for about 3 seconds. Then the door opens again, and a blast of wind explains matters better than any lecture. Snow sweeps along the floor. The lamps flutter. A woman gasps as cold touches her face. The door shuts with effort, and everyone silently agrees that bravery may remain seated. A small laugh passes through the car. It is not mockery. It is recognition. The storm has made philosophers of you all, and the chief lesson is that indoors is excellent. More coal is brought. The heater ticks and grows warmer near the centre. Passengers arrange blankets so heat can be shared across laps and shoulders. The mother and young woman sit closer, with the child nestled between them. The elderly gentleman gives up his second scarf to pad the draft at the window base. He insists he is warm enough. This is clearly false. Still, the scarf stays there, pressed along the sill like a humble little barricade. It blocks some of the cold air, and several passengers praise the idea. The gentleman pretends not to be pleased. His ears go pink, though that may be the cold. Outside, another attempt begins. The engine gathers itself. Steam builds with a deepening breath. You feel pressure through the floor before movement comes. The lamps quiver. The walls creak. Somewhere ahead, men shout instructions into wind. The locomotive pulls. The first movement is so slight you doubt it. Then the carriage shifts, inches forward, stops, shifts again. Wheels bite. Snow scrapes along the sides. The train moves perhaps the length of a man's arm, perhaps less. Everyone leans forward unconsciously, as though belief has weight. Then the engine slips again. The sound is sharp, frustrated, almost animal. Power without purchase, effort without ground. The train settles back, and the storm resumes its low, satisfied moan. A sigh spreads through the car. The conductor lifts one hand before anyone can ask. They will keep working, he says it calmly. And because he is so tired, the calm feels earned. Then he steps out once more, lantern first, shoulders braced for the cold. You watch the door close behind him. The singing has stopped, but its warmth lingers in memory. The passengers settle again, quieter now, yet not defeated. They have heard the train try. They have heard the crew persist. This matters. Hope does not always look like forward motion. Sometimes it sounds like shovels starting over. You draw the blanket around your knees and let your breathing slow. The storm has surrounded the train with a labour of its own. It piles, packs, blinds, freezes, and fills. Against it, men answer with fire iron, lanterns, and hands. Nothing about the struggle is elegant. It is noisy, cold, repetitive, and uncomfortable. Most real endurance is like that. A railway man laughs outside, faint and brief. Someone answers him from farther ahead. Their voices vanish in snow, but the fact of them remains. You picture them as scattered points of warmth along the buried train, each lantern a small refusal of darkness. Inside, the passengers listen. The carriage is a chamber of waiting, yes, but also of witness. You hear the railway fighting for every yard it cannot yet win. You feel the limits of steam, steel, and human strength meeting the soft, immense patience of snow. You understand, slowly and sleepily, that history is not always made when great machines race forward. Sometimes it is made when they cannot move at all. The lamps glow. The heater ticks. The wind leans hard against the walls. Outside, shovels rise and fall into the drift, and the crew keeps carving at the night. The telegraph has gone silent, and the silence feels different from the snow. You cannot hear a telegraph line from inside the carriage, of course. There is no clicking instrument beside your seat, no operator leaning over a brass key, no paper tape curling like a tiny pale ribbon. Yet the news moves through the car all the same. The conductor returns with frost on his collar and says the wires are unreliable. He chooses the word carefully. Unreliable means messages may not pass. Unreliable means a station may be calling and hearing nothing. Unreliable means the train is no longer part of a speaking network, but a warm, dark shape buried somewhere along the line. The passengers absorb this quietly, because everyone understands that lost communication changes the size of the storm. The snow outside was already hiding the world from your eyes. Now it is hiding you from the world's knowledge. A woman near the rear asks whether anyone knows your exact location. The conductor says the railway has procedures, and the train's general position is understood. His answer is measured, and perhaps reassuring enough for a room that wants reassurance badly. Still, he does not say a message has been received. He does not say help knows every detail. You look toward the frozen window. It offers no opinion. In ordinary times, telegraph wires run beside the railway like long black thoughts. They cross fields, follow embankments, pass stations, and stitch distant towns into sudden conversation. A delay can be reported, a warning sent, a request made. A clerk in one town can reach another without stepping into the weather. Tonight, those wires carry snow, ice, and doubt. The carriage smells of damp wool and long waiting. Food has been eaten down to crumbs. Coffee flasks are nearly empty. Coal smoke lingers in the air, softened by breath and lamplight. The red ribbon still rests in the child's hand, though his fist has loosened in sleep. Its colour looks deeper now, almost like a coal ember. The conductor stands near the centre of the car and explains what little he can. Some lines may be down. Some poles may be leaning. Snow and wind may have broken communication between stations. The crew will keep the train protected, and railway men along the route will know trains are missing their schedule. Missing their schedules? That phrase nearly makes you smile, though not happily. The train is not merely late, it has vanished into weather. Yet official language remains tidy, wearing polished shoes even while standing in a drift. The businessman mutters that a schedule can miss him for once. No one laughs loudly, but several faces soften. His irritation has become familiar, almost domestic. It belongs in the carriage now, like the heaters ticking or the salesman's sample case. A mainstream fact settles heavily in the room. During the Great Blizzard, telegraph and telephone lines in many affected areas failed under snow, ice, and wind. Cities and towns that had grown used to rapid communication found themselves suddenly cut off. The storm helped strengthen support for placing important wires underground, especially in dense urban centres where overhead lines had become a tangled modern forest. You imagine such lines strung above city streets, wires crossing wires, poles dark with them. News, money, orders, gossip, grief, and reassurance all travelling invisibly over people's heads. Then the blizzard comes, and the invisible becomes painfully material. Wood snaps, metal sags, messages stop. Modern life, it turns out, can be very heavy when covered in ice. The clergyman asks whether a written message could be carried by a man on foot. The conductor shakes his head. The nearest station may not be far by rail, but distance in a blizzard is not measured honestly by miles. It is measured by visibility, drifts, wind, exhaustion, and the chance of keeping direction. A porter adds that snow has covered the low markers beside the track. He says even men who know the line are moving carefully. The world outside has lost its labels. Roads, fences, culverts, ditches, and crossings have all been dressed in the same white coat, which is elegant but deeply unhelpful. The young woman with knitting asks whether trains behind them will be warned. The conductor says lamps and signals have been placed as safely as possible. He says men have gone back along the line when conditions allowed. His jaw tightens on that last phrase. When conditions allowed, you picture a brakeman walking away from the train with a lantern and signal flags. Every step sinks. Wind twists around his body and tries to turn him sideways. The rails beneath the snow are both guide and hazard. Behind him, the train glows faintly through the storm. Ahead, only white air waits. That image stays with you because it contains the whole night. People trying to remain connected, while every force around them works at separation. A quirky story comes from the elderly gentleman who remembers visiting a telegraph office years ago. He says the operator recognized another operator by the rhythm of the clicks, claiming each man had a hand as distinct as handwriting. The salesman says that seems impossible. The gentleman replies that salesmen also recognize gullible towns at a glance, so perhaps he should be open-minded. This earns the largest laugh in hours. Even the businessman smiles. The salesman bows slightly from his seat, accepting defeat with theatrical grace. The little burst of humour feels precious, not because it removes the danger, but because it proves the room still has room inside it. Fear has not filled every corner. The conductor is called away again. The door opens. The storm enters in a white rush, and the lamps tremble. You catch the smell of raw snow, burnt coal, and cold iron. The door closes, leaving a few flakes spinning in the aisle. They melt into dark specks on the boards. You watch them vanish. A conversation begins about who might be waiting at stations ahead. A daughter, a husband, a sister, a hired carriage, a clerk holding a room, a shopkeeper expecting goods. The train's silence is not contained within the train. It spreads outward into bedrooms, offices, depots, kitchens, and hotels where people wonder why someone has not arrived. You think of station clocks under smoky lamps. You think of men checking posted times and women listening for whistles. You think of telegraph operators trying their keys and hearing no reply. The storm has made absence travel faster than any message. The mother presses her cheek against her child's hair. She says softly that her own mother will worry. The young woman with knitting answers that mothers are professionals in that field. The reply is gentle, and the mother smiles without opening her eyes. A scholarly uncertainty lives among the surviving accounts of broken communication. Historians still argue how quickly railway officials understood the scale of the crisis as reports failed and schedules collapsed. Some emphasize courageous local action, while others point to confusion created by scattered information. Both can be true when a storm turns a network into isolated pieces. Inside the carriage, isolation has a sound. It is the absence of station bells, the absence of shouted news, the absence of a conductor returning with a definite message from somewhere else. It is also the small persistence of nearby sounds, breath, fabric, coal, glass, and wind. When large communication fails, the nearest human voice grows larger. The clergyman offers to write down names and destinations in case a message can later be sent. This practical kindness gives people something to do. A notebook appears, then a pencil. The pencil point breaks almost immediately, because even stationery has chosen difficulty tonight. The salesman produces a small knife and sharpens it with great solemnity. The notebook begins its journey down the aisle. People give their names quietly. Some add towns, some add street addresses. One man spells his surname twice, with the exhausted patience of a person accustomed to postal confusion. The elderly gentleman gives his daughter's address and then repeats it under his breath, as if the words themselves might walk there. When the notebook reaches you, the paper feels cold under your hand. You write carefully, pressing harder than necessary because the train shifts in the wind. The letters look darker than expected. Your own name seems oddly official on the page, evidence that you are here, wherever here is. The notebook continues onward. The act calms the carriage, not because it solves the problem, but because names resist disappearance. Each line says that every passenger has a place beyond the storm and someone who may need to know. It is a small archive made under bad lamps in a trapped train. A railway man enters and speaks with the conductor near the door. You hear the word pole, then wire, then down. The conductor's face remains still. He nods once. The railway man warms his hands around a cup someone offers, then steps back out. The news travels without announcement. A pole down somewhere nearby, perhaps. A wire fallen, perhaps. Nobody knows how many. Nobody knows whether messages are still moving by another route. Uncertainty does not arrive as a thunderclap. It seeps in through the seams. Just like the cold, the passengers become quieter, not hopeless, just thoughtful. Each person has begun imagining the missing chain of information, a train not arriving, a station unable to reach another, a family unable to ask, a city street buried beneath white drifts, its wires drooping like broken strings. The snow has not only trapped bodies, it has trapped knowledge. You pull the blanket closer and feel its coarse fibres against your fingers. Your hand smells faintly of cheese, paper, and coal dust. It is strange how much the body records. Even memory has a scent when the night is long. The wind lowers for a few minutes, and that pause unsettles you more than the gusts. Without the constant roar, the outside feels enormous. The carriage sounds too intimate. Someone sniffles. Someone's stomach growls. The heater ticks, ticks, ticks. Far away, a shovel scrapes twice, then stops. In that lull, the conductor speaks more softly to those nearest him. He says that, without reliable messages, the safest plan is to keep everyone aboard, maintain heat, protect the train, and continue clearing when possible. It is not dramatic. It is not glorious. It is what can be done. Much of survival is administration. That thought nearly makes you laugh, but sleepiness softens it. Forms, lists, lamps, coal, blankets, signals, and counted passengers may not stir the blood like heroic rescue, yet these things keep fear from becoming chaos. The notebook of names sits on the clergyman's lap like a humble shield. The young woman ties the child's red ribbon around the notebook so the loose pages stay shut. The mother watches, then nods. The ribbon now holds more than colour. It holds names, destinations, and the fragile promise that silence will not last forever. Outside, the wind rises again. It comes in a long, gathering push, first whispering under the door, then pressing against the entire side of the train. Snow blasts over the roof. The carriage creaks as though the storm has placed a hand on it and leaned in close. Lamps flicker. Passengers go still. Then the gust passes. Breaths release. One by one. The businessman says he never liked telegraphs anyway. They bring bad news too quickly, he says. The woman from Vermont replies that tonight they are bringing no news at all, which is not a marked improvement. A murmur of amusement moves across the seats. You notice how conversation keeps saving the room in small ways. A joke here, a memory there, a name written down, a cup passed carefully, a person who knows nothing certain still saying something kind enough to be useful. The storm has broken the long-distance voices, but it has made the close voices clearer. You lean back and let the sounds around you settle into a slower rhythm. The conductor's low discussion near the door, the mother's soft whisper, the clergyman turning the notebook pages, the salesman quietly counting his sample packets, perhaps to calm himself. the elderly gentleman repeating an address only once more. The carriage no longer waits for a telegram. It waits for daylight, for ploughs, for cleared rails, for any sign that the larger world still knows how to reach this narrow room. Yet in the absence of messages, the passengers have made their own record. They have written themselves into the night. You close your eyes for a moment. Behind your lids, you imagine wires stretched across the storm, dark lines trembling under ice. Some are broken, some still hold. Some may yet carry a spark when the weather loosens its grip. The thought is comforting enough, if not certain. Nothing tonight is certain except cold, breath, and the stubbornness of people. The train remains still. The snow keeps piling. The telegraph remains mute somewhere beyond the glass. But inside, under low lamps and scratchy blankets, names have been gathered, food has been shared, and voices continue to answer one another. For now, that is the message. Dawn arrives without brightness, as if the sun has sent a pale note of apology. The windows no longer show darkness, but they do not show morning in the usual way. They glow with a flat grey whiteness, thick and close, like cloth held against the glass. The lamps are still burning, weaker now in the dull light, their flames small and yellow inside smoky chimneys. They look tired, which seems only fair. You open your eyes slowly. For a moment, you do not remember where you are. Your neck aches from its crooked rest against a folded coat. Your knees are stiff beneath the wool blanket. Your feet feel distant, tucked somewhere inside boots that have become less footwear than cold storage. Then the smell returns. Coal smoke, damp fabric, stale coffee, leather, lamp oil, and many sleeping bodies. The train, the snow, the long pause in the middle of nowhere. Around you, passengers wake in uneven stages. One man opens his eyes, frowns at the ceiling, and appears personally betrayed by consciousness. The young woman with the dark knitting lifts her head from the back of the seat, blinking as if she has surfaced from deep water. The mother checks the child before checking herself. That order tells its own quiet story. The child is awake already, gazing at the ribbon tied around the notebook. He looks less frightened than curious, which makes him wiser than several adults in the room. His hair stands up on one side. Nobody informs him. Some truths can wait. The carriage has cooled during the night, not dangerously, but unmistakably. The blanket on your lap holds a pocket of warmth, while the air around your face has a thin, metallic chill. When you breathe in, your nose stings slightly. Your fingers, tucked in gloves, feel swollen and clumsy. A porter moves down the aisle, asking in a low voice whether everyone is well. He carries a lantern, though daylight now seeps through the windows. The lantern gives his hand a warmer colour than his face. He looks exhausted, but upright. In such circumstances, upright is a respectable achievement. Someone asks what can be seen outside. The porter says, the world is buried. That simple answer draws people toward the windows. Slowly, carefully. Passengers wipe frost from the glass with gloves, sleeves, handkerchiefs, and the corners of shawls. The cold bites through every clearing motion. Little portholes appear along the car, cloudy at the edges, revealing pieces of a transformed landscape. You lean toward your own window and rub a circle clear. At first, you see only snow pressed against the lower half of the glass. It rises higher than the sill outside, packed hard against the car. Above that, the view opens into pale morning. The sky is the colour of unpolished pewter. Snow still falls, but more lightly, drifting sideways in thin streams. Beyond the train, the land has vanished into smooth shapes. There may be fences beneath those long white ridges. There may be roads. There may be low stone walls, ditches, bushes, and the dark mouths of culverts. Everything has been softened into one continuous surface. The world looks unfinished, as if someone has laid a clean sheet over it and forgotten to return. You search for the horizon. There is none. The sky and ground meet without a line, both pale, both blurred by moving snow. A nearby telegraph pole rises from the drift, its lower half swallowed. The wires sag heavily, coated in white, and one hangs lower than the rest. It trembles in the wind like a tired string. A passenger near the far window whispers that the train is buried, not entirely, not in the childish sense of being hidden under a mountain, but snow has climbed the steps, covered the wheels, packed around the undercarriage, and filled the cuts along the track. The cars sit in a trench of white, their sides crusted with frozen powder. It is enough to make the train feel less like a machine and more like a cabin trapped in winter. Mainstream accounts of the blizzard describe drifts that rose to extraordinary heights in places, shaped by fierce winds rather than simple snowfall alone. Snow does not merely fall in such storms, it travels, gathers, piles, and hardens where the landscape gives it shelter. Railway cuts were especially vulnerable because their walls caught blown snow like basins. Now you see what that means. The track ahead is invisible. The rails that once seemed so certain have disappeared beneath an unbroken white path. The engine's dark body is partly visible through drifting curtains, its front crusted with snow, its stack breathing smoke into the grey morning. Steam rises and folds back along the train, warmer than the air, quickly torn apart by wind. Men are moving near the locomotive. They look smaller than they should. The drifts make them seem like dark marks on a vast page. Some carry shovels. One leads another by the sleeve across an uneven patch. A lantern still burns near the ground, ridiculous in daylight but useful in the grey-white confusion. Their coats are stiff, their shoulders rounded, their movements careful. You notice how slowly everyone outside moves. There is no wasted drama. Each step must be tested. Each shovel thrust costs strength. Each glance must search for hidden rails, holes, ice, and tools half buried between uses. The storm has turned familiar railway ground into a place requiring caution, almost like a frozen marsh. Inside, the passengers absorb the view. Nobody speaks for a while. The morning has answered many questions and raised others. Yes, the train is still here. Yes, the snow is immense. Yes, the world continues beyond the glass, though it has been simplified beyond recognition. No, arrival is not about to stroll in carrying a breakfast tray. The businessman finally says that his hotel room is probably still available. The woman from Vermont replies that the hotel may have become a snowbank with curtains. A few people laugh, softly and stiffly. Morning laughter has a hoarse texture. It comes from dry throats and cautious hope. Breakfast becomes the next subject because bodies are practical, even when minds are poetic. Food supplies are checked again, with less ceremony and more honesty. Crumbs are gathered. Remaining bread is divided. A little cheese is shaved thinly. The last coffee is passed in careful sips, more for warmth than flavour. You receive a small piece of bread and a corner of cheese. The bread is dry, and the cheese has grown hard at the edges. You chew slowly, letting the taste fill your mouth because there is no reason to hurry. The cheese is salty, sharp, and stubborn, very suitable for the occasion. The child receives the largest crumb by general agreement. A quirky comment comes from the salesman, who claims that snow makes people honest about appetite. In ordinary weather, he says, people pretend to dine. In weather like this, they simply eat. The clergyman says there may be moral value in both, though he accepts his piece of bread with suspicious speed. The little meal settles the room. You feel warmth return to your stomach. Modest but real. Outside, men continue to work. From time to time, a shovel flashes dark against white. The engine releases steam in great size, and smoke blows low across the drift. A railway worker bends beside a wheel, scraping snow away from the metal. Another stamps his feet and claps his hands before returning to the shovel. The conductor enters, bringing cold morning with him. His coat is frosted, and his face is raw from wind. He removes his cap and shakes snow onto the floor by accident. Then he looks down at the mess with tired resignation, as though housekeeping has finally surrendered. He tells the passengers that the storm remains severe but has eased enough for better assessment. The train is held by drifts both ahead and around the wheels. The nearest open line is uncertain. Crews may attempt to reach them with heavier equipment, but messages remain difficult. He does not decorate the truth. Strangely, that helps. Night needed comfort. Morning asks for facts, even unwelcome ones. You feel the carriage become more attentive, not calmer exactly, but steadier. People can endure uncertainty better when its shape is described. A scholarly uncertainty surrounds many morning descriptions from the stranded trains. Historians still debate how much later memory brightened the scenes, turning hardship into picturesque adventure. Some recollections emphasize cheerful endurance, while others describe fear, cold, and confusion. Both kinds of memory may belong to the same morning, depending on who held the pencil. From your seat, the morning is not picturesque. It is beautiful, certainly, but beauty with teeth. The snow outside catches what little light exists and sends it back softly. The land looks clean, hushed, and innocent. Yet beneath that quiet surface lie buried rails, blocked switches, lost roads, deadened wires, and hundreds of human plans quietly postponed. The view is gentle only because you are behind glass. The mother asks whether the child may look outside from a safer window near the aisle. People shift to make room. The young woman lifts him carefully onto the seat edge, holding him under the arms. He peers through a cleared patch and stares. He says the train is sleeping. No one corrects him. The phrase moves through the carriage more tenderly than any official report. A sleeping train. Dark. Warm. Breathing smoke. Tucked into a bed of snow by a storm with questionable parenting instincts. Even the conductor smiles faintly at that. Outside, one of the workers raises a hand toward the window. The child waves back with solemn delight. The worker waves his shovel in return, then nearly loses his balance in the drift. He catches himself, and several passengers gasp. He looks up, gives a theatrical bow, and returns to work. The carriage exhales laughter. That moment changes the morning. Not entirely, of course. The train remains trapped. The snow remains immense. But the outside no longer feels like an abstract danger. It contains faces, gestures, and a man foolish enough to bow with a shovel in a blizzard. Humanity persists, sometimes with poor footing. You look again through the glass. Farther away, faint shapes emerge and disappear in the blowing snow. Perhaps a line of trees. Perhaps a fence top. Perhaps the roof of a small shed almost buried to its eaves. You cannot tell. The landscape has become a puzzle with most pieces painted white. A porter says there is a farmhouse somewhere beyond the fields, but no one can see it. The statement feels almost mythical. A farmhouse with a stove, bread, maybe a dog asleep near the door. It might be 100 yards away or impossible to reach. Snow makes distance dishonest. The elderly gentleman asks whether farm families nearby will be safe. The conductor says most rural houses are built for winter better than trains are. This earns a thoughtful silence. A house has cellars, fuel stores, thick walls, and perhaps neighbours who know the land. A train has speed, and speed is not useful while standing still. You hear the lesson without anyone naming it. Machines are powerful when their world remains arranged for them. Rails must be open, signals visible, fuel available, crews connected. The blizzard has not destroyed the train. It has changed the conditions around it until power cannot become motion. The heater ticks steadily. The coal supply is being watched with care. People keep blankets around their shoulders while moving as little as possible. The air remains close, but the morning light makes it less oppressive. Faces that seemed ghostly at night now regain detail. Red noses, tired eyes, flattened hair, stubble, wrinkles, crumbs. Everyone looks less formal. This is another gift of morning. It removes some illusions. Fine coats are wrinkled, hats are bent, gloves are mismatched. The businessman has ink on one cuff and blanket lint across his lap. The clergyman's collar is askew. The woman from Vermont looks exactly the same, which seems unfair but impressive. A quiet routine begins to form. Windows are cleared in turns. Passengers check on one another. Blankets are shaken and rearranged. The notebook of names is inspected, then retied with the red ribbon. The salesman offers pins to secure a torn shawl. The elderly gentleman saves crumbs in a paper for any birds that may still be making questionable life choices outdoors. You wonder if birds are hidden in barns, hedges, or eaves. Then you wonder about city animals. Horses trapped in stables, stray dogs beneath stairways, pigeons tucked into ledges above streets buried deep. The blizzard stretches outward in your mind. No longer just a railway event, but a whole social world interrupted at once. Milk deliveries halted, newspapers delayed, markets empty, doctors struggling to reach patients, people digging from door to door. Yet inside this car, morning narrows again to breath and warmth. A railway man knocks snow from his boots and brings in a pail of coal. The black lumps look almost beautiful against the white clinging to the bucket's rim. He feeds the heater, and a stronger warmth slowly spreads near the centre. The smell of fresh coal is sharp and dusty, promising comfort with a sooty handshake. Passengers move closer by instinct. The young woman resumes knitting, using the slow daylight. Her needles click softly, a domestic sound in an impossible place. The dark blue wool grows by a few rows. You watch her hands and feel drowsiness return, though morning has come. There is something soothing in repeated work, in a pattern continuing when larger patterns have failed. Outside, the snow begins to fall more lightly. Not stop, not clear, just lessen enough that shapes hold longer. The engine stands ahead like a patient beast, smoke rising from its stack, sides streaked with ice. Men gather near the drift, talking, pointing, measuring depth with shovel handles. Their movements suggest planning rather than frantic effort. That too feels like morning. You settle back, blanket over your knees, bread still on your tongue. The train may be trapped, but it has survived the night. Its lamps still burn, its heat still breathes, its passengers still answer when spoken to, its crew still moves outside with shovels, lanterns, and stubborn purpose. The white world remains without horizon, but it is no longer entirely unknown. You have seen its height against the windows, its weight on the wires, its smooth burial of roads and rails. You have seen men working inside it, small but persistent. You have seen a child name the train asleep and make frightened adults smile. The morning is pale, cold, and uncertain. It is also a kind of arrival, not the arrival printed on tickets or promised by schedules, but the arrival of sight after blindness. You sit in the snowbound train, watching the grey day gather slowly around you, and you feel the strange calm of knowing where you are at last. You are in the middle of the storm, and the train is still breathing. By late morning, the rescue begins as a rumour of sound. It is not yet visible through the pale windows. It comes instead as something beneath the wind, a distant grinding that does not belong to shovels or steam from your own engine. At first, you think it is imagination, because tired ears become creative in a storm. Then the conductor stops mid-sentence and listens. Everyone listens with him. The sound rises, fades, then returns. It is heavy, rhythmic, and far away, like iron being dragged through a frozen dream. The child lifts his head from his mother's sleeve. The salesman closes his sample case without finishing the latch. The woman from Vermont leans toward the cleared window with the grave attention of someone judging a pie crust or a weather system. A railway man enters from the front, breathing hard. He says a plough has been heard down the line. The words move through the carriage softly at first, then with force. A plough. A real one. Not a memory, not a clever story, not a heroic wedge imagined in lamplight. Somewhere beyond the white cuttings, beyond the buried rails and sagging wires, a heavy plough is forcing its way toward the stranded train. Hope enters carefully. Nobody cheers at once. Experience has taught the room caution. Hope can slip, just like wheels on buried rails. Still, faces change, shoulders lift. People sit straighter. The businessman checks his watch. then seems to realise watches have done very little useful work lately and puts it away. You lean toward the window. The cleared patch is cloudy again, filmed by frost and breath. You rub it with your glove until the cold bites your knuckles. Outside, the world has gained contrast. The snow is still immense, but the air has thinned enough to show the shape of the cutting. White banks rise on both sides like frozen walls. The track ahead lies buried in a trough between them. Men stand along the line, dark against the snow. Some point into the distance. Others step carefully along the drifted edges, using shovel handles as staffs. Their lanterns are no longer bright, but they still carry them, as if daylight has not earned complete trust. The distant grinding comes again. This time, several passengers hear it clearly. It trembles faintly through the rails, a low metallic murmur travelling beneath the snow. The sensation reaches your boots before your ears fully believe it. Iron is speaking to iron, quietly and from far away. Mainstream railway rescue during great snow blockages often relied on snowplows, shovel gangs, extra locomotives, and local workers. A plough could clear a route only if engines could push it forward and the line behind it remained usable. Rescue was rarely a single dramatic arrival. It was usually a hard sequence of clearing, stopping, reversing, repairing, and trying again. Naturally, this makes the passengers both relieved and impatient. A man near the rear asks how far away the plough is. The conductor says distances are uncertain because sound carries strangely in snow. That is a magnificent answer, if one enjoys uncertainty wearing a fresh coat. Still, it is honest. The plough may be close enough to hear and far enough to delay every cheerful thought. Outside, the crew changes its work. The men near your train are no longer only digging to move forward. They are preparing to meet help. They clear around the couplings, uncover sections of rail, and mark dangerous patches with poles, cloth, and lanterns. A worker scrapes snow from a signal lamp and holds it up for inspection. Another digs at a switch stand until its dark iron shape emerges. The switch looks absurdly small against the buried world. You watch two men labour over it. One kneels and chips ice with a tool. Another shields him from the wind with his body, which is a kindness so practical it almost hides itself. After several minutes, the kneeling man rises, stamps his feet, and moves the lever a little. Not enough, apparently. They begin again. The carriage follows their efforts like a theatre audience, though much better behaved. Each visible movement matters. A shovel lifted, a hand raised, a man waving another forward, the engine releasing steam, a red cloth tied to a pole. These are now the gestures of approaching deliverance. You cannot hear all their words, but you understand the language of work. A quirky rumour brightens the aisle when the salesman claims that some plough crews name their machines. He insists one was called Old Rumbler and another the Snow Eater. The clergyman doubts this deeply. The salesman replies that doubt is free, but good names are rare. The child immediately whispers Snow Eater with reverence. The mother hushes him gently. Though she smiles, you picture the Snow Eater coming through the cutting. A blunt wooden or iron wedge thrust before a locomotive. Snow flying in heavy wings. Men braced behind frost-rimed windows. The name may be nonsense. It may also be exactly what people would say while half frozen and proud of their machine. History contains more silliness than monuments admit. The sound grows stronger. Now it comes in pulses. Grind. Pause. Grind. Then a muffled thunder as something strikes packed snow. A faint shout travels through the air, flattened but recognizable as human. Men near your train respond with waving arms. One raises a lantern high, though the gesture is ceremonial in daylight. People do ceremonial things when language is too small. Your carriage stirs with movement. Blankets are folded, then unfolded, because the cold remains. Bags are gathered too early. Hats are found under seats. Someone tries to smooth wrinkled clothing and quickly gives up. The elderly gentleman checks his carpet bag, his address slip, and the small bundle saved for his daughter. His hands tremble slightly, whether from cold or feeling. The conductor asks everyone to remain seated until told otherwise. This instruction is necessary and deeply unpopular. Passengers settle back with expressions of obedient resentment. The train has become a village, yes, but it is also still a railway vehicle, and railway vehicles prefer not to have citizens wandering about while heavy rescue machinery approaches through snow. You stay seated, though every part of you wants to stand. The grinding grows into a roar. Through the window, snow begins to move in the distance. Not fall, move. A white plume rises beyond the cutting wall, then collapses. Another plume follows, higher and nearer. The men outside step back to safer positions. One waves both arms slowly, signalling. Then you see it. At first, it is only a dark wedge pushing through white. Then the outline sharpens, a plough front packed with snow, a locomotive behind it breathing black smoke and white steam together, and men clustered along its sides like figures painted in soot and frost. The machine advances slowly, not majestically, not smoothly, but with enormous stubbornness. Snow breaks before it in heavy slabs. The plough does not slice the drift like a knife through cake. Nothing so tidy. It rams, lifts, shoves, and throws. Snow tumbles aside in chunks and powder. Some spills back immediately, because the storm has no sense of closure. The locomotive behind strains forward, wheels biting, smoke bending low in the wind. The carriage erupts into applause, not loud enough to shake the windows, but loud enough to startle everyone, including the applauders. The mother laughs and covers her mouth. The businessman claps with the same seriousness he once gave his newspaper. The woman from Vermont nods once, which from her feels like a parade. Outside, one of the plough crew waves his cap. The child waves the red ribbon from the notebook, and the man waves again. Snow blows between them, but the exchange is clear enough. Rescue has a face now, a ridiculous waving cap, and a blackened locomotive doing its best impression of a mythological beast with poor visibility. The plough stops short of your train. This causes a breathless silence, though no one indoors knows why. Men gather between the two engines. The conductor steps out, joining them. There is discussion, pointing, measuring, and more shoveling. Of course there is more shoveling. Rescue, it seems, is not an event but a committee with frozen hands. A railway worker returns to explain the plough has cleared part of the approach, but packed snow remains around the stranded engine and near the rails between the two trains. Crews must connect work safely, check track conditions, and avoid forcing damaged or hidden sections. The relief engine may help pull or push once the path is prepared. This is less thrilling than a rescue scene in a cheap adventure paper. It is also far more comforting. Careful work means people are thinking. People are checking. People are not simply flinging machinery at the problem and hoping history writes kindly afterward. That is progress of a quieter sort. Historians still argue about whether the blizzard's rescues should be celebrated mainly as feats of courage or studied as warnings about fragile systems. The wisest answer may allow both. The men outside are brave, certainly, yet their bravery is needed because tracks, schedules, wires, and cities have all met a storm stronger than planning. You look through the window at the relief crew. Their faces are dark with soot, windburn, and exhaustion. One man bends over with hands on knees, breathing visibly. Another drinks from a tin cup. A third laughs while shaking snow from inside his sleeve, which seems unlikely to improve anything. Still, laughter keeps appearing in places frost cannot seal. Passengers gather supplies for the workers again. Food is scarce, but offerings appear. A few crumbs, a strip of meat, a final biscuit saved by someone with heroic restraint. The elderly gentleman gives the small apple he had kept back. He says his grandchild can wait for another apple. The mother looks at him with such tenderness that he immediately begins fussing with his bag. The porter carries the food out. Cold sweeps in when the door opens. But this time it carries excitement as well as sting. You hear voices more clearly. Men calling instructions, shovels striking, steam venting. The relief locomotive gives a deep chuff that seems to enter the carriage floor and rise through your bones. The two crews work toward each other. From the window, you watch a narrow trench form between the engines. Men shovel in relays, throwing snow up onto banks already taller than their shoulders. Others clear around the wheels, inspecting rods and brakes. One worker lies almost flat to reach ice packed beneath a step. Another hauls loose snow away in a wooden box. Improvisation dressed as logistics. The storm has eased enough to reveal effort, but not enough to be polite. Wind still snatches at coats. Snow still blows from the bank tops into cleared spaces. Hands still stiffen. Tools still vanish if placed down carelessly. A shovel disappears for several minutes until a man finds it under fresh drift and raises it triumphantly. The carriage applauds again. Apparently, you now applaud shovels. This is what the night has done to standards. The young woman laughs quietly at that. Her knitting rests beside her, forgotten for once. The notebook of names lies on her lap, still tied with the child's ribbon. She unties it carefully and adds a note at the bottom of the page. Found by relief crew near midday. Her handwriting is neat, steady and dark. The phrase makes the room quieter. Found. It is a simple word, but it carries warmth. To be found means someone searched, calculated, listened, cleared, came nearer, and did not give up. It means your narrow wooden world has been restored to the map. The conductor returns with clearer news. The line behind the relief plough is passable in stretches, though slow and difficult. The plan is to clear the stranded train enough to move it back toward a safer station or connect passengers with relief transport if needed. Nothing will happen quickly. The conductor's face anticipates complaints. None arrive. Nobody wants speed now as much as certainty. You realise the passengers have changed. Hours ago, delay felt like insult. Now care feels more valuable than haste. Let the men check the rails. Let them clear the wheels. Let them argue with the switch, the coupling, the drift, and the stubborn laws of traction. Arrival can wait a little longer if safety is walking beside it. Outside, the relief engine backs slightly. The plough shifts, then moves forward again, pushing a final packed ridge aside. Snow bursts outward, and the men cheer. The sound reaches the carriage clearly enough to lift every head. Then your own engine answers with a whistle, short and hoarse, but unmistakably alive. The child claps his hands over his ears, then grins. The whistle seems to wake the train. Even standing still, it feels less trapped. The rails beneath you have a future again. The engine ahead exhales with renewed force, and the carriage trembles as if stretching after sleep. Passengers hold bags, hats, blankets, and one another's hopes in careful hands. A coupling clanks somewhere ahead. Men shout again. The relief crew continues clearing, widening, checking. One man walks along the side of your car and taps the wheels with a hammer, listening to the sound. Tap. Pause. Tap. The noise is small, precise, and oddly reassuring. After so much wind, exactness feels luxurious. You watch him move from wheel to wheel. His coat is patched. His gloves are mismatched. His cheeks are raw. He carries himself with the deep tiredness of a person doing necessary work in awful weather. When he reaches your window, he glances up. You lift a hand. He nods once and continues tapping. That nod feels like a document. It says you are seen. It says the train is being considered, piece by piece, not as a legend, but as wood, iron, people, heat, and risk. Rescue is not only the arrival of force, it is the return of careful attention. The businessman clears his throat and says he will write to the railway company. Several passengers look at him sharply. Then he adds that he will praise the crew. The carriage accepts this amendment. The woman from Vermont says he should mention the shovel. He says he will mention the shovel. Laughter moves easily now, tired but bright. The kind that comes when fear begins to loosen its grip, not suddenly, but finger by finger. The cold remains. The food is gone. The seats are still cruel in subtle ways. Yet the world outside has changed from sealed whiteness to difficult connection. More workers arrive on foot behind the plough, dark figures carrying tools. Some may be local men from stations, yards, or nearby farms. Their boots sink deep, Their shoulders bend under shovels and ropes. A horse appears briefly farther back, steam rising from its flanks, guided by a man nearly lost in his coat. The sight feels strangely ancient beside the locomotives. Steam and horse breath mingle in the morning air. There it is, the century in one picture. Iron engines, telegraph poles, hand shovels, lanterns, horses, wool coats and human voices. Progress has not replaced old labour, it has recruited it. The great machine still needs hands, hooves, and people willing to step into snow up to the thigh. You breathe against the glass, fogging the cleared circle. The rescue continues with patient urgency. Patient because nothing can be rushed safely. Urgent because everyone is cold, tired, and still far from shelter. That balance fills the scene outside. Men move quickly, then stop to check. Engines strain, then rest. Shovels flash, then lean upright while orders pass along the line. The conductor finally returns with the words the carriage has been holding its breath to hear. They expect to move the train soon. Soon is not a time. Soon is a lantern in fog. Still, it is enough. Passengers close bags properly now. Blankets are folded and stacked for return. The notebook is secured. The child gives the red ribbon one last look before his mother ties it around his wrist for safekeeping. You tuck your own parcel away, though there is almost nothing left inside it. The lamps are turned down as daylight strengthens. Their glow fades from the walls, leaving the car to the grey-white morning. Faces look clearer, older, and oddly peaceful. The passengers have spent a night inside the storm's pause and emerged into the rescue's careful noise. Outside, the plough waits ahead like a blunt guardian. The relief engine breathes smoke into the sky. Men stand ready along the cleared track. Your own locomotive gathers pressure, steam hissing around its wheels. Beneath your boots, a tremor begins. Tentative at first, then stronger. No one speaks. The carriage holds itself still, as if movement might be frightened away. Then the train pulls once, stops, and pulls again. Snow scrapes along the lower panels. The wheels groan, resist, and slowly turn. This time, they keep turning. The motion is slight, almost shy. Yet it passes through the car like a blessing. A few passengers laugh. One woman cries silently into her glove. The elderly gentleman closes his eyes and holds his carpet bag with both hands. The businessman whispers something that sounds suspiciously like thanks. You look through the window as the buried cutting begins to slide past. White banks tower close beside the train. Men stand along them, waving shovels, caps, and gloved hands. Snow still falls lightly over their shoulders. The plough ahead opens the way inch by inch, and your train follows through the narrow passage carved from the storm. The world has not become easy, but it has become reachable. You sit back beneath the fading lamps, feeling the carriage sway into motion, and the sound of wheels returns slowly under the floor. Not the confident rhythm of ordinary travel, not yet. This rhythm is cautious, bruised, and deeply beautiful. It is the sound of being found. The train moves through the cuts like a thought returning slowly to speech. Its wheels turn with caution, grinding over rails that have only just been given back to iron. Snow presses close on both sides, rising in white banks taller than a standing man. The carriage windows show walls of winter sliding past, sometimes smooth, sometimes broken by shovel marks, sometimes stained grey where smoke has settled on the drifted surface. You sit very still at first. Everyone does. The motion feels too precious to disturb. A cough seems too loud. A shifted bag sounds almost reckless. After so many hours of stillness, movement has become delicate, like a candle carried through a dark room. The train sways, pauses, moves again, and each little advance is accepted without complaint. The relief plough leads somewhere ahead, unseen now except through sound and trembling. You hear its work as a blunt, distant push, a heavy churn of iron, steam, and snow. Sometimes the train stops while men clear a stubborn patch. Sometimes it creeps forward only a few yards. Yet the direction has changed. Waiting has become leaving. The passengers feel it in their bodies before they say it. Shoulders loosen. Hands unclench. The mother kisses the child's hair without waking him. The young woman smooths her dark knitting and folds it carefully into her bag. The elderly gentleman checks the parcel meant for his daughter, then checks it again, because joy often needs something to do with its hands. The businessman looks out the window and says nothing. This silence from him is so notable that several people glance over. He catches their looks and raises both hands in surrender. He says he is conserving remarks for civilization. The woman from Vermont replies that civilization will have to brace itself. The tired laughter that follows feels warmer than the heater. Outside, the storm has not vanished. Snow still drifts across the air, faint and slanting. Wind lifts loose powder from the banks and sends it smoking along the cut. But the blizzard's rule has been interrupted by labour. Shovel lines mark the walls, footprints cross near switches. Lantern poles stand like small claims of human order in the white. The train passes a telegraph pole leaning at an uneasy angle. Its wires sag under ice, one broken strand hanging low and dark against the snow. For a moment, you see it clearly through the cleared glass. Communication, once so invisible and confident, now looks like a string someone forgot to mend. A mainstream lesson of the Great Blizzard became difficult for cities to ignore. Overhead wires, exposed railways, and crowded street systems could fail together when weather struck with enough force. In later years, more discussion turned toward buried cables, underground transit, better storm planning, and stronger urban systems. Snow had delivered a severe lecture, with no concern for whether anyone had brought notebooks. The carriage has its own notebook. The clergyman holds it on his lap, still bound with the red ribbon. The names inside are no longer only a record of uncertainty. They are proof that people counted one another when the wider world had briefly lost count. The child wakes and sees the ribbon there, then touches the one around his wrist. He seems satisfied that the important colour has multiplied. A railway worker walks alongside the slowly moving train for several yards. His boots sink deep, and his shovel rests across one shoulder. Passengers lift hands in greeting. He gives a nod, then turns back toward the plough. His face disappears in steam and fine snow. There is no grand speech. History often wishes there were. A conductor on the steps, perhaps, thanking everyone with perfect dignity. A passenger declaring the brotherhood of humankind. A violin emerging from nowhere, because memory has poor budget control. Instead, there is wet wool, stiff backs, empty food wrappers, and people blinking into the pale morning. It is better this way. The truth has texture. You feel it in the coarse blanket folded across your knees. You smell it in coal soot caught in your scarf. You hear it in the wheels, still cautious, still alive. You taste it in the dryness of your mouth after a night of shared crumbs and cooling coffee. The train passes a place where a fence has nearly disappeared. Only the top rail shows, running briefly beside the track before dipping under snow. Beyond it, the land opens into white fields. A barn roof rises in the distance, its lower walls buried from sight. Smoke climbs from a farmhouse chimney, thin and grey, bending with the wind. That smoke touches the passengers deeply. A house, a stove, someone awake inside, perhaps making bread, perhaps worrying over animals, perhaps staring at the same storm from a safer room. The sight of ordinary shelter feels almost magnificent. The elderly gentleman whispers that people will be digging for days. No one doubts him. The train slows near a cluster of men and horses. The horses stand heavily in the snow, steam rising from their bodies, blankets strapped across their backs. Men load tools onto a sled. Their movements belong to an older world than the locomotive. Yet here they are beside the rail line, necessary and calm. Progress and tradition share the same frozen morning, neither one able to be smug. A quirky detail emerges from the salesman as he watches the horses. He says he once heard that some railway men trusted a horse's hesitation more than a timetable in bad weather. If the animal refused a crossing, they listened. The conductor, overhearing, says a horse has better sense than many officials. Then he adds that no one should quote him. Everyone immediately stores the remark for future use. The train continues toward a safer station, though the journey remains slow. At each stop, men inspect the rails, clear points, check wheels, and signal the plough ahead. The carriage no longer groans at delay. Delay now feels like care. People have become students of caution, taught by snow and poor sleep. You look around the car and see the temporary village beginning to loosen. Bags are fastened, scarves are retied. Formal manners return in small pieces, like furniture uncovered after a storm. The mother thanks the young woman for helping with the child. The elderly gentleman thanks everyone for their kindness, although he has offered much of it himself. The salesman gives the child the red ribbon properly, claiming it has lost all commercial value after heroic service. The child accepts with royal seriousness. The clergyman offers to send the list of names from the station, once telegraph service allows. Several passengers repeat their details. The businessman writes his address on a card and gives it to the conductor, asking that praise for the crew reach the proper office. He looks embarrassed by his own decency, which makes it more convincing. A scholarly uncertainty remains around how such shared experiences were remembered later. Historians still question how much the blizzard became a moral story about courage, how much it became a technical warning, and how much became family legend polished over generations. A person stranded in a train might tell it differently at breakfast, at old age, and in a newspaper interview. You suspect all versions would contain truth. There is the truth of fear, the truth of discomfort, the truth of people becoming kinder when convenience falls away, the truth of systems failing, and hands repairing what systems cannot repair alone. The truth of snow, soft as down and strong as stone when gathered by wind. The station appears gradually, not as a sudden scene, but as a set of dark shapes inside white. First a signal post, then the outline of a platform roof, then men moving with shovels, their coats black against snow piled along the edges. Smoke rises from the station chimney, thick and hopeful. A lamp burns near the door, even though morning has come. Its glow looks domestic, almost tender. The train draws closer. Passengers lean toward the windows despite themselves. The platform is half buried, but a path has been cut through it. People stand waiting there. Railway staff, local men, perhaps relatives, perhaps only curious citizens who have come to see what the storm has delivered. Their faces turn toward the train as it arrives with aching slowness. The wheels stop beside the platform. This time, the stillness is different. It is not the terrible stillness of being trapped. It is arrival, partial and messy, but real. The conductor asks everyone to remain seated while steps are cleared and assistance is arranged. Several passengers laugh softly at the familiar instruction. Remaining seated has become a talent. The doors open, cold air enters, but it carries the smell of station smoke, shoveled snow, horse sweat, and something like soup from a room nearby. Soup may be imagination, it may also be destiny. Either way, the scent is enough to make everyone sit taller. One by one, passengers step down. You wait your turn, hand on the seat back, feeling the carriage around you. Its wood panels, frosted windows, tired lamps, and narrow aisle have held an entire night of human uncertainty. It is only a railway car. It is also the room where strangers shared food, names, stories, warmth, and the strange quiet of being cut off together. When your turn comes, you rise carefully. Your legs protest. They have spent hours folded into a shape never recommended by nature. The blanket slides from your knees, and you return it to the porter with thanks. He nods, too tired for ceremony. The aisle feels shorter now, though perhaps you have simply crossed it too many times in your mind. At the door, you pause. The step is packed with cleared snow, and a railway man offers his hand. His glove is damp and cold. His grip is steady. You descend into the white morning. Snow crunches under your boots, firm and squeaking. The air strikes your face with clean force, washing away the stale carriage warmth. You stand on the platform and breathe. It smells of coal smoke, wet wood, cold iron, horses, wool, and snow. The station roof drips slowly where heat from inside has softened the edge. Men shout practical instructions. A shovel scrapes. A horse stamps. Somewhere, a woman laughs with relief so sudden it almost becomes a sob. You look back at the train. Snow clings to its sides. Ice rims its steps. Smoke rises from the engine, and steam curls around the wheels. It looks battered, patient, and faintly dignified, like an old traveller who has endured a very long conversation with weather. The passengers gather in small clusters. Some will continue onward when possible. Some will wait for messages. Some will write letters, send telegrams when wires permit, or find rooms near the station. The shared village of the carriage begins to dissolve into individual lives. This is natural. It is also a little sad. The elderly gentleman finds a bench near the station wall and sits with his carpet bag on his knees. He pats the parcel inside, smiling to himself. The mother wraps the child more tightly while he shows the red ribbon to anyone willing to admire it. The young woman stands beside them, her dark knitting tucked under one arm. The businessman approaches the conductor and shakes his hand. No speech, only a firm grip. That is enough. The conductor nods, then turns toward another question, another passenger, another task. Duty does not pause long for gratitude, which is inconvenient but admirable. You step into the station building. Warmth meets you in a soft wave. Not luxurious warmth, not the dry and perfect warmth of modern rooms, but stove warmth, uneven and smoky and deeply welcome. The floorboards are wet with tracked snow. Benches are crowded with travellers, bundles, baskets, and railway men moving with tired purpose. A stove glows in one corner, surrounded by boots pointed toward it like worshippers. You move close enough to feel heat on your shins. The sensation is almost painful at first, then delicious. Your boots steam faintly. Your gloves relax around your fingers. Someone offers hot tea in a chipped cup. You take it with both hands. The cup is rough, woke, and blessedly real. The tea tastes weak and wonderful. Through the window, the snowbound train rests beside the platform. Men continue working around it, clearing, checking, preparing. The storm's work is not finished, and neither is theirs. Yet for you, the deepest part of the night has passed into memory. You understand now why people will speak of this blizzard for years. Not only because of the snow, though there is plenty of that. Not only because trains stopped, wires failed, and cities froze into confusion. They will speak of it because the storm revealed the hidden threads of daily life. Milk routes, rails, messages, lamps, coal, neighbours, strangers, and the fragile confidence that morning will arrive as planned. Morning did arrive. It simply wore a shovel and took its time. You hold the warm cup and let the station sounds settle around you. Footsteps, low voices, steam outside, coal settling in the stove, wind pressing against the walls with less authority now. The great blizzard remains beyond the windows, but it no longer contains you completely. You carry its silence with you. You carry the amber lamps, the frosted glass, the shared bread, the notebook of names, the whistle returning to life. You carry the image of a train sleeping in snow, then waking by inches under the hands of tired workers. You carry the knowledge that progress is strong, but kindness is warmer. And as the day opens slowly over the buried land, you feel history becoming soft at the edges. Not false, not simple, just softened by memory, by breath on cold glass, by the colour of a ribbon in a child's hand, and by the sound of wheels turning again where silence had settled. The station grows quieter in your mind, even while people move around you. You keep both hands around the cup and let the warmth travel into your palms. The snow outside seems farther away now, not gone, only gentler because a wall and stove stand between you and its endless white patience. Your shoulders lower, your breathing slows. The urgency of arrival loosens into something calmer, like a knot slowly warming under sunlight. You imagine the train resting at the platform, no longer fighting, no longer pushing, simply breathing steam into the cold air. Men pass beside it with shovels lowered. Horses shake snow from their manes. Telegraph wires wait in their long frozen lines for repair. And somewhere, very soon, a message will begin to move again. Names will be sent. Families will hear. The lost will become found in ink, in speech, and in the relieved closing of doors against winter. You let that thought become slower. The storm turns quiet in memory. The hard wind becomes a murmur beyond thick curtains. The frozen window becomes a pale square of moonlit glass. The rough blanket becomes heavy and kind across your knees. The carriage lamps glow again, but softer now, as if they are stars seen through sleep. Every breath around you becomes peaceful. Every wheel sound becomes a lullaby. There is nothing more to solve tonight. The snow has fallen. The train has waited. The people have endured. The morning has opened a path, narrow but real, through the white and patient world. You may set down the cold, the worry, and the long listening. You may let the old engine fade into distance, its whistle softened by snowfields and time. Your eyes grow heavier, the cup is warm, the room is safe. Outside, history keeps its quiet watch. And inside, sleep comes gently down the track.